Hello and welcome to a special edition of Video Games to the Max. I am your host, of course, Sean Garmer. Here with me, this game is so big, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We had to have a huge panel to talk about and give spoiler thoughts and non-spoiler thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So, if you're listening later on podcast, this is going to be weird because you're not seeing the people's faces. So, but to my immediate right, we got the Final Fantasy aficionado guy that we have on the show a lot, Mr. Bad Brackets Randy Isbelle.
Yeah, the game is so big, you brought in somebody for each 30-hour chunk of this game.
Yeah, exactly. We had to talk about like every part of the game, so I'd have every person in there for that. Next to him, he reviewed the game for the Outerhaven. Also a writer extraordinaire, Andrew Agress.
Agress, but everyone says Agress.
I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's
should
all
have
right.
asked. Right below me here is also a writer for the Outerhaven, SithScott.
Hey, yeah.
And then we have first time on the show, on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Did the review for Rebirth for Roger Ebert, freelance writer extraordinaire, Josh Broadwell.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And also he was on basically doing a preview of his thoughts when he was like one of the few people that had the game along with Josh and Andrew to talk about it, review it, all of that. Hayes Madsen, glad to have you on again, writer for Inverse, and he did the review and it has its own ending explained thing on Inverse as well that you can go read.
Thanks for having me again.
And everybody's review is in the description as well, so just in case you want to check out their work, they all do tremendous work here. So we're going to talk about the game here. We're going to talk about the ending. We're going to talk about all the stuff. We're not going to start there. So if you are watching or listening, we are going to do some non-spoiler things at first. And then as it goes on, I'll give you the big spoiler warning. If you want to get out, you have that window to leave. After that, you're also, see, we're already getting,
that's a call-in show?
Yeah, exactly.
It is now.
So, all right, guys, let's start with, I guess, general thoughts. Looking at the game as a whole, you don't have to give me like a mini review or whatever, but Randy, we've talked about it a lot, but I kind of haven't really had you on to talk about it. Really, like when you're done playing this game as a big Final Fantasy fan and all that stuff, where is this for you? Like, what did you feel when you were done with it?
I'll tell you in about 3 years when I'm finally fully done with all the other side stuff of the game. No, it's fantastic. I think a lot of the reviews that I've read or seen, I think they say it extremely well. It's like, I can't believe this game actually exists. Like, Remake was something that was spectacular a few years ago, where they took a small section of 7 and they ballooned it out to a 30 or 40-hour game. And this took a larger section and just grew everything out. The amount of times you go back and think of Final Fantasy VII, like the original game, where it's like, oh, I remember this part. And then you go back and play it, and it's 2 screens. That was it. But we remember it. These creators go, okay, we'll make it a big, giant area now for it, and we'll expand things out, and they expand on characters, and just the amount of love that has been put into this game has been absolutely phenomenal. And I know Sean and I have talked about a lot. The pacing of this game is just perfect. For somebody like me that just had to know what happened at the end because I didn't want it spoiled, so I was like, I can't not be on the internet for this long. I have to know. I could speed run through the last few chapters and then go back and clean up everything else. It wasn't locked for me at that point. But if you want to do everything else, like Maximilian Dude, of course, did, and was like 130 hours in before he finally finished his first game through, you could do that too. There's just so much to this game. It's just the simplest way to put it. A little bit of everything for everyone. All the mini games are not going to hit for everyone, but you don't have to do them. But there were so many more that hit that didn't to me. And good luck to any other game out there for Game of the Year. Sorry.
Yeah, they did set a tall task for this one. And we already had big games come out before then, too. So interesting to already look at this year, how crazy it is. Hayes, I mean, you had it during the review period, so I guess it's different. Like, you're probably thinking so many moments, you're like, man, I can't wait till people see this and experience this. Like, now that you're done with it, now you've seen all of it, people get to play the game. Like, what is your thought? And, I've seen you already playing Dragon's Dogma 2, doing all that stuff. Where does this sit for you, I guess?
I think, as I've had time to reflect on it, I still personally love it as much as I did when I wrote that review. But I think what's been most interesting for me is to see there's been so many different interpretations of things that happen in this game. And people have so many different thoughts and so many different opinions on it. And to me, that's the kind of games that I love the most, is when we have this wide breadth of experiences that people have. I think that speaks to just how rich this game is in general, even if whether the things it does works for you or whether they don't, everyone has something to say about it. And I think that's fantastic. I love that weeks later, we're still having discussions about these things. So that's kind of my favorite part. My feelings on the ending have only gotten stronger as I've sat on it for weeks. I like it, and I like it even more than I did when I played it. And I think it's just going to be interesting to reflect on this while we wait for the third game.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting when we get to talking about the third game. How long it will take and how long we got to wait, but at least they gave us a lot to think about on that front. Josh, same thing for you. What were your thoughts on the game when you got done with it?
Well, there were a lot of them, but I think the dominant one was just I was really impressed how they took what to me was like the most barren stretch of Final Fantasy VII and turned it into something so thematically rich. That they deepened all the character relationships. They actually explored their personalities more in ways that, honestly, after Remake, I didn't expect them to, because I like Remake, but I think the characters really come into themselves more in Rebirth. That was the thing that really stuck out for me. Because honestly, I don't actually like the original Final Fantasy VII. I only played it for the first time a couple years ago, and I didn't like it. Especially, and the part that I liked the least was the part that Rebirth covered. So I was kind of hesitant going into it, thinking, should I actually, what am I going to think? So, but yeah, I was surprised. I liked it a lot more than I expected, and I think it's, even with some of the areas that to me felt a little stretched, I think it's probably one of the best interpretations of the game that Square-Enix has done ever since it came out. All the different takes on it and variations or whatever. Yeah, I think this is the best thing that could have happened to it.
Andrew?
It's funny. I think I'm the anti-Josh here because I played Remake and I really liked it. And then I played 7 for the first time right after Remake came out, and I loved it. And my favorite parts of the game were the Midgar Zolmer, or however they changed a little bit, the Junon Parade, the Gold Saucer, the Forgotten City. So pretty much everything that this one covered. So for me, I went in with really high expectations of Rebirth, because it's actually, for me, and I talked to Josh a little bit about this before, my favorite stretch of the game, interestingly, because I like a good ring quest. I'm a big fan of Fellowship of the Ring. So I like that journey across the planet, seeing different locales. So to see Rebirth realize these places that I had such fun with the first time around, I feel like it really met my expectations, if not surpassed them.
Yeah, that's a little bit how I felt too. Was just, this was way better than I thought it was coming in. I was a bit worried, just because, when you start blowing something up that's already one section of a game, that doesn't always turn out well, especially with the way a lot of times Remake felt like, man, we're really stretching this here. And they did a great job of not ever making you feel like that. But I think we'll get into the big reasons why when we talk about more of it. Scott, what did you think about Rebirth?
So when they had like interviews and stuff talking about like where it was supposed to take place in original Final Fantasy VII, I was kind of worried. For one section being that Remake was like a 40-hour experience that was based off of like the first 4 hours of the game. And 4 hours is if you did everything in Midgar. Like you could
Right.
speed run Midgar like an hour and you could get out of there. So they're taking like the next like 20-ish hours after Midgar and turning that into like a 60, 80-hour experience. I was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
But it's like everything that I didn't like about Remake, some of like the padding, how things were like forced on you, were either done better or completely just erased completely. So I'm really enjoyed everything that Rebirth did for the Final Fantasy like Remake trilogy. I hope that the third game is, if not as good, but is better. I don't know if they can actually top it, but if they do, I'll be very impressed.
Yeah, that it's they set a big bar for themselves as far as like now we have a massive expectations for this third game. I'm sure that they probably feel that too. If anybody watched that thing that they did with Uematsu and Nomura, celebrate talk about more about the music, but Nomura sounds like he's exhausted.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what he's gonna feel like for the next 3 years, 4 years doing this thing. Josh, a lot was made of the open world, the way it is, right? A lot of Ubisoft stuff in here, and then you have side quests and other stuff. Like you have a bunch of open worlds in Final Fantasy, but this is kind of a different version of an open world they've ever done in the other Final Fantasy games. Like, what did you think going through this when you didn't have people? Like, it's easier for us, right? Randy, Scott, that we had guides. So when something got frustrating, oh, I'll just watch this YouTube video. You guys didn't have that. You, Hayes and Andrew, y'all didn't have that. Like, how did you feel going through this? Did you feel any differently than a lot of people do, or did you feel the same things of, man, this is annoying or not?
It fluctuated a lot. I started trying to do everything in the grasslands, and then it got a little overwhelming, and so I stopped. But then when I got to Junon, it kind of I don't even know why. I guess just because maybe the layout of the land was more interesting. But I started doing everything again, and then I also stopped activating the towers so that all the icons would go away. Because that to me, like I was actually annoyed when there was like I forget what it was like. It wasn't Moogle Intel, but it might as well have been. But it pointed out where the first Moogle house was, or Moogle store. And I was like, oh man, that looks really cool. I would have loved to have just stumbled on that. And yet here it was telling me, Moogle's ahead. And so, yeah, after that point, and I just tried to find things on my own, didn't really pay much attention to the icons. I enjoyed the open world a lot more. I'm iffy on open worlds anyways. I think that a lot of they're just too big for the sake of being big, and I get bored easily with them. But I also think Rebirth does a really good job adding emotional significance to a lot of what you're doing in the open world. To where I don't remember if I said this in my review or not, but so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But it's like you're kind of when you're finding these small versions of the life spring or whatever, it's almost like there's a little act of subversion there. Like you're pioneering a way to live without Shinra again, finally. And I think it helps too that I know some people weren't thrilled with it, but I think it helps that a lot of the people that you met in Midgar, they're out in the world too, doing their own thing. So it's like you're all just kind of learning how to live outside of Midgar, out from under all of that. This is this is the future. So I think that helped me enjoy it a bit more. I don't know if everyone else saw it like that, but yeah, it kind of smoothed over some of the more tedious aspects of it for me.
You know what? You just opened like a whole Pandora's box for me. I didn't even think about it like that at all. But like, see, that's what's cool about hearing other people's opinions on this. Hayes, was it the same for you, or what'd you think of that?
Yeah, definitely. I wrote a little bit of a piece about this, but one of the things I really like about the open world in this game is that each of the areas kind of have their own flavor, so to speak. Like they're all very visual distinct. They all have different layouts, the different chocobo abilities. but also a lot of the side quests and the side activities that you get kind of tie into how those areas' stories expand. So, like in Cosmo Canyon, you're fighting the spirit of the Gi warriors, or in Gongaga, you have to go pick mushrooms. And so I think a lot of that content is really kind of tailor-made to help flesh out how these areas kind of tie into the larger world. And I think that's what I really enjoyed. And it has that feeling of like, when I played RPGs in the 90s, and it's like every town you got to was a big event. It was like I get a new town to run around in, and I can explore and find all these side characters. And that game Rebirth has that same feeling for me, where every time I got to a new town, it felt special.
Do you have a favorite region of them?
I think in terms of like content and exploration, I'd probably say Cosmo Canyon, but I like the music and the vibe of Gongaga. So,
Josh, what do you?
I was just gonna jump in real quick. It's really interesting that you said that, because I've had several people tell me that something similar, basically, that it felt like the old world maps in RPGs, only that was actually, there was nothing there. In the old ones, at least there's, kind of cool stuff to do in Rebirth. Yeah, so I've heard that's an interesting take.
You have a favorite region too, Josh? Or
honestly, yeah, I'd have to go with Junon. I mean, I like most of them, but I really like the Junon region, and I think like the backstory about the Republic and versus Shinra really made it more interesting to me.
Andrew, how was that for you? Not you had to like figure stuff out. You could talk to, I guess, Hayes and Josh as well, but did you like exploring all that?
For the open world elements and the different quests and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of my big thing, this is kind of like a big thing in my review just across the board, was I feel like Rebirth was a game that really respected my time. And so unlike people mentioned about Remake, where you're kind of forced to do, like, you're forced to find these cats if you want this extra stuff. I mean, you're not, but it's like highly encouraged to. This, I feel like you could really take it or leave it for any of the open world side content. And so for me, like, I spent like 10 hours in the grasslands. And then when I moved on, I was like, okay, I got to get to the end of this game. So I kind of just did a little bit here and there and then went back after I finished it. And so certain things like the chocobos, I don't know if I needed to have to tame a chocobo. Maybe I could have done without that. But I loved how the side quests, and this is something I think Hayes has talked about, the side quests felt really integral. So there were moments where I would go, wait a moment, like in Gongaga, for example, I see Cisne, and having played Crisis Core, I go, oh, are we going to acknowledge the history there? And the game in the main story doesn't really do that. But then if you go back and do the proto-relics or do the side quest there, you get a lot of Cisne's backstory tying into the characters where they are now. So that was really exciting. And then favorite region, it's tough. It's close between the grasslands and Junon. Junon, for me, I was like, this is what it looks like scaled up. Grasslands, I love. It's like that moment with Aerith where she goes, oh my gosh, we're in the open world. And that was my feeling of seeing everything open up was really exciting. I kind of teared up a little bit in Calm just to see this tiny dinky town from the original game have such a glow up. Really affected me.
Oh yeah. Like you get that feeling of they figured out how to do towns. And this looks so beautiful. Like it's not this little small thing that you're going to, and then it's like 5 little houses and whatever. It's like, wow, there's like this bridge you go over and there's water. You can actually go in the water. They literally let you do anything in there. And it's such a small part of the whole journey, but like that lets you know, oh, they aren't joking around. They're letting you do stuff in here. You have freedom that you didn't have in the Midgar sections. Randy, it's funny because, you and I my co-host also reviewed the game, but he got the code basically at launch. So he was playing it like the rest of us. But it's funny to hear Andrew say this game respects my time when the thing that he constantly would tell me is this game does not respect your time. But you know what I would say is that I think what he's getting at, but he's not saying it this way, is that they connected everything so well. And I said this in my review of everything is connected. Everything. The world intel is connected to the side quest. Side quest is connected to the main game. It all is connected to the relationship system. The Proto-Relic gives you more lore on things from other things in Final Fantasy VII. Like, it makes you want to do all of these things, even if they're mundane. These rewards that you get for this stuff is so worth going out of your way and even getting lost in Gungaga to do it. You know, Randy, did you feel like that? I know you didn't. I know you just decided I'm going to mainline the game or whatever. But when you did do some of those things, did you feel that too?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm with Josh. It was Junon really changed my view on the way the open world was going to work for 7. The Grasslands was just, that really felt like a Ubisoft section where it was just a big open area and everything was spread out, and then you had to go, everything was like, all right, now it's on the other side of the Grasslands. And then this one would send you back. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And then Junon was a lot more concise and so much was involved with it. And then the stories really grow out from there. And yes, I always battle back when Mark would bring up the idea of Final Fantasy VII not respecting your time. And in a way, like you said, I do understand where he's coming from, because you do want to do all this stuff. Like, I didn't like the side quests in Remake because they were chapter specific. And it's once you got to a certain point, well, you better get this stuff done if you want to be able to experience it, or you're done. With Rebirth, I could just do them whenever. I'm still finishing up a couple of the side quests and having a good time, and it doesn't mess up any of your game. But like you said, you want to do it. It's like, I felt bad skipping a lot of the stuff that I was doing, but I just really had to know what was going on with Sephiroth and what was going to happen at the end of this game. It's like, all right, I can get to it later. Once I kind of figured out how the game was going to work. But Junon to me was just that opening moment of, oh my God, there's so much stuff. And I like how Josh said he didn't go out and get the towers at that point just so he could kind of find it himself. I think there was a moment in Junon for me, and it was that realization that, like, you go out and each of those different things that you're collecting or you're finding have different elements that kind of lead you that way, whether it's an owl or did the live stream pushing you that way, or as my family has deemed them, the nut butts, the little chocobos that get you to the chocobo benches and stuff. And it was in Junon when I'm like following one of the little nut butts around, and then an owl would fly, and I'm like, all right, hold on, I'm gonna go get this. It's like, you just hang out here. And then on my way to that, I would run into one of the fiends that you would have to fight for one of the fiend challenges. And then it was like, I think I did 4 things before finally going back just to pick up the pole for the Chocobo station, because they were all so close together. I was like, all right, now it's not like the Grasslands where everything's so spread out. They find cool ways to do it. And like everyone else has said, they connect it with stories. They connect it with the conversations that they're having while you're doing all this stuff. It's not just go to point A, go to point B, do your thing, and you're done. Like, you're learning different pieces of lore if you so choose to do so. And it just adds so much fantastic elements to the storytelling.
Scott, did you have a favorite region? And I think that you're talking about Junon, the perfect like part of the main story that really showcases how they tie in stuff is you could literally go and completely miss like 3 soldier sets that you have to go find of the Sector 7 soldiers, but you'll find so many cool little things depending on who you find and you don't, because they tied all that stuff in. Like, just seeing the soldiers was it like have a standee of Rufus Shinra just there and they're taking pictures with it, and it's like, this is so, they don't have any of this technology in the original Final Fantasy VII, but they made this so modern by adding this stuff in here. It's funny.
Yeah, I really love that too. I loved all like the life they give some of the NPCs. My favorite region is probably the Coral region. So I kind of completely skipped like everything in the Grasslands because I just wanted to get out of there to go to where the story wanted me to progress. Junon was when I started actually doing a lot of the more open world stuff of getting the towers and stuff. But it was Coral that I actually spent the time trying to do as much as I could. But that was also because I wanted to do my best to actually find that stupid Tonberry King.
Yeah.
But all over the place trying to search for him, just to realize, oh no, you have to get all of these things before it'll tell you where he was located, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it did let me appreciate a lot of what it was doing with it's kind of just like it's subtle world building as well as its subtle just exploration. That is, if you skip all the towers, which I did. I skipped a lot of the towers just because it's like I can easily see the tower, so I don't need to actually do anything there. The only place I struggled getting to towers was Gungaga, and that's just because they have some weird mushrooms you got to hop on to get to specific ones.
Yeah.
That place is like a maze.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's a good thing the music is so good.
Oh yeah, man. I felt like I
Music.
was in The Lion King or something the whole time. I'm like, what's? I hate this, but I want to keep listening to this song, so I'm
Right.
gonna keep going.
I had a spot in Gongaga that was that same thing where I completely got lost. I'm like, how do you get up to the top of this hill? And I spent 30 minutes. I went, oh, it's underground. Never mind.
Yeah.
I was so mad at myself. I'm like, I went by this hole 7 times trying to. How do I get up here? Where's the mushroom that's gonna hop me up? No, just go down this hill. So yeah,
I don't know
get
how
it.
many times I was trying to find one of the towers, and I literally went by I had no idea until I looked at a guide and I was like, are you kidding me? I went by the stupid tree 5 times. And all I had to do was turn right here instead of right here, and I would have gone on the damn tree trunk and gone in a circle. Like, oh god.
Yeah, that was one thing I didn't realize is that you could glide on some of the tree branches, and it's just that was never told to you. You just had to
Yeah.
figure it out.
It's like, you could have done that thing that they added to the original 7 where you could have had the little red thing that tells you where there's an entry point, and that would have helped a lot.
More yellow
But,
paint.
Yeah.
Put yellow paint on the
Not
branch.
enough yellow paint, clearly.
Yeah, they needed more yellow paint. Another thing that how they obviously do the whole world intel and everything is with mini games, right? And we all know that 7 had a ton of mini games, and everybody loved every single one of them. This one has some interesting ones as well. Did you guys get stumped by some of the mini games? As you're I need to get through this section, I need to keep going with the game. Hayes, where you're like, why is this more difficult than it should be?
I think the main story does a good job of not making you play the mini games too much. You have to do the introductory level of it, but if you don't want to do the harder stuff, you can move on. But after I beat it, before the embargo was up, I was like, I'm going to try and platinum this. And I did some of the harder mini games, and I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to platinum this. The crunch off and the chocobo gliding, and oh my god, I spent so
the
long
chocobo gliding
on those. But I think they're fun if you're not trying to do completionist stuff.
Yeah, that was my thought too. I had fun with most of them. There was some of them where Gears and Gambits, you can just go go away. I'm once you got past the first 2, you get to 3 and 4, and I'm like, dang it, why did you have to tie this wedge stuff from Remake in here? I'm almost at the point where I don't want to do this anymore. But I kept going, and I finally beat it. But Josh, did you have a favorite mini game or one that stumped you at all?
I mean, I've always been terrible at all the games in the Gold Saucer, so that didn't really change in Rebirth. But yeah, I have no completionist drive, so I was happy to just do the introductory thing and keep going, pretend it didn't exist anymore. So, but no, I mean, I think like Hayes said though, if you're not trying to complete them, it's kind of just quirky and whimsical and fun. I mean, some of them are a bit silly. I think the ones with the boxes were kind of unnecessary. But yeah, I think just on the surface level, it kind of added a sense of whimsy for me that hadn't really been present since the PlayStation 1 era. As the series kind of shifted more towards more serious storytelling without any kind of lighthearted moments. Excuse me. So yeah, because I didn't really try very hard, I didn't have any that stumped me. So yeah, that's the short version of that.
Well, I mean, Andrew, at least did you try the chicken mini game while you were doing the review? period, or
No. I think I came back to that one. And I did a lot of the early side quests and side content, but I am similar to Randy in that at a certain point I was like, I'm just gunning for the ending.
Yeah. Scott, are you doing a lot of stuff, or are you kind of are you going back to that later, or
I might go back to some of them. I can tell you one I'll never go back to, though, is a 3D brawler. After I got like the third one done, and they realized, oh, there's like 3 more, and they're all much harder. I was like, no.
The
I
final
couldn't get
side
past
quest,
the freaking Moogle. I don't know.
the final side quest of the game where you help the Shinra middle manager. When you fight him in 3D brawlers, that's the most frustrating thing I've done in a game since like fighting Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts.
Wow. Damn, it's that level.
That's the only side quest I haven't finished.
That middle manager will stay a middle manager. I don't care. The only mini game that I would go out of my way to do the completion run for, just because I thought it was such a fun and engaging one, was the Shadow Blood Queen, or the Queen Blood.
Yeah,
and that one was just so much fun learning, like them putting lore into a card game that also surrounds the Final Fantasy VII mythos. Was just kind of the most Yu-Gi-Oh level sense of having a card game in a game.
The ending was it just straight up an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah,
pretty much.
The whole thing was an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's a season of Yu-Gi-Oh.
It's like we're definitely doing the Pegasus like Dark World thing in here, and like, my God, it was so. That's what kept me going through that entire thing. It was like, it got to the point where I get to a town and be like, "Where's the Queen's Blood people?" Because I want to go and kick some Queen's Blood.
Here's
right
the
now.
story. Yeah. Story, whatever. Where is the Queen's Blood challengers?
I think one of my favorite moments of the game is honestly when you figure out there is a story to Queen's Blood.
Yes.
Because you play it for a few hours and you're like, this is fun. And then you do one match and all of a sudden it's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all.
So you guys that were, like you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to write about aside from the game or whatever? Did you really have this same thought that Queen's Blood was going to be the thing they're talking about? If they make any DLC for Rebirth, it's going to be Queen's Blood related?
I thought Queen's Blood would be big, yeah. And part of that is because I reviewed Witcher 3 when that came out, and seeing how Gwent blew up, it was like I got the same exact vibe from Queen's Blood. It was like people are gonna love this.
Josh, do you think this could actually be its own game, or do you worry about it like maybe getting like Gwent, where people are excited about it at first and then it kind of just goes away? Or
I could see it being its own game. It's a bit more approachable. Like, I actually never understood Gwent, which I probably shouldn't say out loud, but I have no idea how to play it. The tutorial, I was like, okay, I finished the tutorial, like in the actual Witcher 3, I finished the tutorial, just then got obliterated in a match and didn't really know what I was doing. So I think if there's anyone else out there like me, Queen's Blood is a lot more approachable for sure. I think it's a really good balance of strategy and just sort of being able to have fun with it. Like you could think really deeply about the kind of deck you're building, or you could do like I did for most of it and just kind of wing it and hope for the best, and then keep restarting like 5 times until you finally win. So yeah, I could definitely see that. It's a really good mix of stuff there for people who, like I said, want to strategize and stuff. People just want to have fun. I could definitely see it being its own game. I would play it.
I think what I also appreciate about Queen's Blood is that all the players were just wacky as hell.
Yes,
like
oh my God.
They all had their own stupid story. Like the one in Nibelheim where the dude is just blatantly not going to work because he wants to play Queen's Blood, and I was like, this is how I feel right now too. I don't want to go to work.
One of my favorite
rules,
NPCs.
technically.
I loved the little girl with the puppet. And like the puppet is like trash talking, and the girl's like an innocent 6-year-old girl. It was very funny to me.
I also like how there's a weird little robot with a cowboy hat, and
Yeah.
you see him and they don't explain it for like 20 hours. What the hell he's even doing there?
He's like the champion of like you have to fight him like twice or whatever, and then the second time you get the one of the craziest parts of the story, the Queen's Blood, which is like, man, Randy, I don't know how far you got into the Queen's Blood stuff, but
I'm right at the end of it.
oh,
So,
okay.
but it's such a fun game. Like obviously it reminds me a lot of Triple Triad, where it really kind of took over as far as being that side game that really hooked on. And the one thing I do worry about if they try to make it a full game is the one thing that really hurt Triple Triad is as Final Fantasy VIII got further and further on, they kept adding all these different elements that to me just ruined Triple Triad. It went away from its simplicity and all the weird board rules and stuff that they would add in to just mix things up. It just made the game less fun and get a lot more frustrating. And I never got to that point with Queen's Blood. Like they added new elements and stuff, but it really added to the strategy. It never felt cheap. It never felt like it was forced upon you. It was just different ways to build decks. And that's what I worry about is then they'll come out with new board rules or whatever. And I'm shocked when I first saw the Queen's Blood and saw some of the cards. I went, all right, they're going to start you off easy with the 3-lane board. But with some of the cards, obviously this is going to go to a 5-lane board. And then as I started to learn the game, I'm so glad they never did. Because that game would have taken forever. But that's what I worry about is that maybe they go, all right, we got to make this as a full thing, but how do we do it? And then they expand it, and then maybe it just kind of loses its luster that Triple Triad does, or like they were saying with Gwent. So
the other thing that surprised me is when you get to the Gold Saucer or Costa del Sol, you see like the challenges that they have. I remember seeing those the first time. I'm like, this looks awful. I don't ever want to do these. And then when I was trying to get the platinum, I went back and did them, and I found out I had a ton of fun with those like specialized challenges where you have to do specific moves or use specific cards. Like it's exceptionally well done. They clearly put so much thought into how to make that mini game kind of evolve over time.
Yeah, but did those challenges have to be so judgy?
No.
Every time you put a card down, oh, I don't know about that one. Fine, I'm sorry, I'll restart.
Like, oh, you did the wrong thing there. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then somehow you figure it out and be like, wow, I can't believe you did that, basically.
Right.
Whenever I figured out, it always turned into, man, I'm an idiot.
On a small thing, I really liked the commentator of the tournament. And one of the moments that made me go, whoa, was when you're dueling Aerith in Queen's Blood, and the commentator is like, is this going to be Aerith's funeral? Find out at the end of this game. And I was like, whoa, that's too much info here.
Meta commentary there.
Yeah, very meta.
It's actually funny because I had no idea. I mean, I was fine because I love playing Queen's Blood, but it's like funny. I didn't realize that you can actually forfeit the whole tournament and then the same thing still happens.
Yeah.
Like, and then what did you guys think when, to me, this is one of the best moments of the entire game. And that's why I think one of the reasons why I love Chapter 5 so much is that moment where you think it's over and then Red comes out of nowhere. It's like, what the hell is happening here?
I audibly laughed.
It's a
you
lot.
just did the moonwalk. Like, what's going on?
They had those moments. They had those moments in Remake where you're like, "There's no way that they're going to do this at all." Like, obviously, this was it was a part of its time back in the '90s, and no way Remake is going to touch it. The same thing was with Rebirth. Like, there's no way they're going to put Red 13 in a sailor suit or in the Shinra suit, and he's going to walk around like he did or dance around and whatever. And then you get, like you said, you get through that entire thing. It's like, yep, they didn't do it. And then, well, never mind. Not only did they do it, they went way over the top with it. It's like every moment that was just a small sec. That's what I love about this game. There are so many things that were just a sprite that moved weird. Oh, no, now it has its own backstory and it's its own scene and we're going to take it way over the top with it. And it's just, again, it just shows the amount of love that they put into this
like
thing.
they literally thought of almost anything to just. But and I love how much like Cloud's personality comes out a lot during that tournament too. He just at the
Mhm.
end, he's just like, "Oh, you want to go?" Like, oh, then he just flicks the card at him and everything. It's like, okay, where's this cloud been the entire time? uh,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I think this game's really good at one thing that often gets overlooked about Final Fantasy in general, of how good it can be at kind of absurdist humor.
Yeah.
I have a piece coming out in the next lock-on volume about Final Fantasy V and how that game like really embraces the kind of like absurdist genre of humor. And I think Rebirth just nails that. You know, it knows, it's completely self-aware about what it's doing, and it at every opportunity they take the chance to go crazy with it. And I think that plays to its strengths.
Oh, for sure. I think I talked about it in our review too, of like, for me, what makes this game, and other people have talked about it, so I don't want to like claim that obviously, but how the connectedness stuff goes through the characters
Mhm.
the most. What makes this game to me is the characters, and how much you feel like they're actually friends throughout this entire thing. And you know, another one of my favorite things from chapter 5 is like, and it's funny because I had just got done reading the Traces of Two Paths book or whatever, and you get to chapter 5 and they literally do that scene from the book there where Aerith is talking to Tifa, like, and then shh, wait, Cloud's coming. We'll talk about this later. And they're both getting out of the Shinra suits or whatever. And I'm just like, man, I know it's the same guy that wrote everything, but it's still like, it's that level of care, that level of
Mhm.
seeing how, you know, they became friends just, and a lot of it's off screen, but you can realistically, we haven't seen them interact this entire time all that much, but you can really believe that that scene is actually happening, and they're really feeling that way from just how you journey with these characters. And I think it goes into how they like really, I feel like everybody gets paid off in a way in this game, but how they introduce the new characters to me and make them pay off, I think matters a lot. What did you guys think of how they, I guess one character that he's by himself most of the time, but he starts off the game, Zach. And then he kind of has these little short interludes throughout the game until, you know, we get to the part at the end. Did you guys feel like they did Zach justice, or did you want more Zach in there? What did you think, Josh?
That's a good question. Excuse me. I think I expected more Zach at the start, especially because he does kick the game off. But I think it works having these limited moments of him, and you know, kind of teases of something else going on with the whole metaverse thing. And I think it was nice seeing him act competently for a change, because he was a good foil to Cloud. You know, it was most of Crisis Core. He's just this, you know, goofy little ding dong. Yeah, I was so it was. I think the moments that he was there, it was really good character growth moments for him. Yeah, I think it probably could have. I think more Zach moments might have kind of cheapened the effect they were going for, because it would have just made it too much like, oh, worlds colliding, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
leaving it to your imagination and making you guess more makes the final payoff better, to me, anyways.
Hayes, what do you think? Was there enough Zach?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I think using Zach sparingly was probably the smarter move. He is a fan favorite character, but I think in this game he's really used effectively as kind of a thematic tool to dig into like that theme this game has of, you know, taking control of your own fate, essentially, which has kind of been the theme of the whole trilogy so far, one of the overarching themes. And I think he plays into that really nicely of, you know, creating a sense of mystery of like, we see these events happening largely the same way that they were in the original game, but he's bringing in that extra element of it where it's like there's a difference, there's little tweaks, there's little differences, and I just thought his story was used effectively in this. And I especially appreciate that all of his segments don't have combat in them, except for the beginning and the end.
Yeah. It's an interesting kind of look at having a character that there are probably a lot of people that wanted him to do more. Like, I can kind of understand the folks that wanted, oh, why am I just walking with Zach? Like, what? This feels like I'm just doing remake again, and I didn't want that. But I feel like it pays off in the end when you have those moments at the end. And I feel like there's some folks that obviously you get to play with her, so it's different in that way. You get to use her in combat all the time. But I've seen a lot of people being like, oh man, Yuffie's just this comic relief. She's one note. You don't get a lot with her. Scott, did you feel like that? Or did you feel like they really made Yuffie into a much better character in this game?
I think they made Yuffie into a much better character, especially because in the original, she's just like the optional character. My very first playthrough of 7, I never got her. I didn't realize she was a thing. I didn't know that she was a thing until I played Kingdom Hearts 1 for the first time. Saw that, looked at it, and said, "She's from Final Fantasy VII. Where? How? When?" Yeah. And I went back to Final Fantasy VII, looked up the guide. I'm like, "How did I miss this?"
Yeah.
But then you realize that she doesn't even have a lot of lines in 7 when you bring her with stuff as a party member to stuff. She just kind of exists, and then you have actual like optional stuff that is also optional that happens like when you get to like the Wutai stuff in 7. That's when Yuffie gets a few moments at least, but most of her moments is just stealing from you and then running away. So I do like that they gave her a lot more of a personality and a more of like a reason of why she's interested in this gang, where they even started that interest coming from Intermission, where we got to have Integrate DLC that happened that gave us a lot more engagement of how Yuffie got interested into Avalanche and why that's such interesting to her, which was a great thing to add to give Yuffie a reason of being here than just, oh, they found her randomly.
Did you like the way she was introduced? I thought that was a different way to do the CPR minigame.
Yes.
There. Then, yeah. What did you think, Andrew, of how they use Zach and Yuffie in this game?
Yeah, with Zach, I mean, my big thing, we'll probably get to this more later, is I feel like there's still a big payoff in part 3 with Zach that they're building to. Right. I feel like he's going to have a big hero moment in 3. It's just my prediction in part 3. So I felt like this was a nice way of introducing a little bit more of him than at the very end of a remake and just kind of teasing out, okay, we have a little bit more Zach. And I feel like they're still building to something, but I liked the amount that we had of him in Rebirth. And then for Yuffie, it's because like a lot of people in the original game didn't really like her. And the next character I know Hayes has strong feelings about is Kate Sith. And it was like Yuffie and Kate Sith people did not like. And I mentioned in my review that those were two of my favorite characters. I felt like the performers did an amazing job at voicing them, making you care about them, making them sympathetic, but also really funny and endearing.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew, for giving me the wonderful segue. That was going to be my next point of Kate Sith, man. I feel like if anyone was absolutely hated in that game by virtually everyone was Kate Sith. And then, well, they actually got a Scottish actor to do his voice. He has amazing, hilarious lines. He's actually competent in combat in this game. And what do you know? I think we all end up loving Kate Sith. Randy did I kind of felt sad when you had that moment of, he's going to leave your party because I liked him so much.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with Kate Sith. With a lot of people from the original, he was never in my party. Even I think in Rebirth, he was one of the later choices. But even on the sections that you had to play as him, he had his own individual feel to him in the combat. And as far as his character went, I thought they really did a good job of getting a little deeper with Kate Sith himself, and it kind of as knowing where that character goes and the backstory and the stuff that they haven't revealed yet. I really think that they kind of hint at it a lot more with Rebirth, and just kind of sowed those seeds a bit, that for those that have played the original go, oh yeah, oh, that I know exactly what's going on here, and you get those great stuff. I thought they killed it with Yuffie. I was a lot like everyone else, where again, she was never really part of my main party when I would play the original, and they made her so overpowered as far as the combat goes. And her character was fantastic. That young innocence, where you can tell she's the youngest of the party, and she has at least life experience in this kind of stuff. You saw that with Integrate. I thought they did a good job, and just her reactions to different moments were fantastic. She probably has the moment I laughed at the most, where she first introduced herself to the group, did her whole big intro, and Cloud just went cool and walked off. I lost it. That was probably still my favorite part of that entire game. So yeah, what they've been able to do with those characters that didn't get a lot of like character building in the original, and now they're some of my favorite characters, and it's Yuffie especially, because now she's part of my main crew. Like it's Tifa, Cloud, and Yuffie. If I'm doing anything, like where I'm really needing to buckle down and beat somebody, those are the three I go with now.
Well, I got to hear what your thing is with Cait Sith, Hayes.
Yeah. To me, he's the one that's gotten kind of the most improvement, because I think in the original game, kind of the big flaw with him is he has that betrayal moment, and that's big. And then everyone accepts him back, and then he doesn't really do anything else the rest of the entire game. He just kind of stands there with everyone. And I think the way his dynamic works with the other characters is incredible. And he's kind of the apex point of my favorite part about this game, where you really get a sense of how these characters play off of each other. Because I realized playing this, that the original game, you don't see a lot of the relationships between the other party members. You see a lot of how Cloud's relationship with these characters grows. You see Cloud's moment with Barrett, Cloud's moment with Vincent, Cloud's moment with Sid. But in Rebirth, it's really about how these relationships are across the board. So it's the little moments that I love, like in a cutscene where you see Yuffie like fake punch Barrett, and he pretends like he's hurt. And, it's just these little interactions that are spread across the entire game that really show you the unique relationships, not just how people relate to Cloud, but how they all relate to each other.
Yeah.
Barrett's reaction to hearing Nanaki's voice change or whatever when he gets to Cosmo is amazing. Like, I'm like, wow, you would have thought that was your buddy telling you that, that you've known for years or whatever. Like, you would not expect that as just a video game character to do that. It was just so off the wall.
One more thing about Cait Sith is I love how they kept the betrayal, but they changed the reasoning. That it's not because he's doing it for Shinra, but because he really cares about the characters and doesn't want them to continue on to the dangerous temple. And having that of like, oh, that's the reason, really, really like nailed it for me, that they've connected him with the party in a really caring way.
And I also do think that they kind of cleaned up a plot hole from the original game once you kind of learn where Cait Sith comes from and all that. We talk about the relationships between all the other characters, not related with Cloud. We just have to also bring up the side characters. The Rude bar scene where he goes into a bald only bar and sings a song.
You
Rude
totally missed that too, which is what's so great.
I absolutely need Rude in my party now. He's my favorite non-playable character in this series. He had some amazing moments in Remake, and then he just gets topped even more with what he does in Rebirth. It's so good. That scene is so great.
Obviously, for us Kingdom Hearts fans, getting to see Elena eating sea salt ice cream was a moment.
Yes.
But
if Sora comes through one of these damn portals in the third game, I quit. I'm not going to do it. I'm not doing it.
Can you imagine? That would be... man, Elena to me was actually so well done in this game too. Like, she got so much personality in this game that I wasn't expecting at all. Like, maybe we fight them one too many times or whatever during this thing, but yeah, I loved her too. It's Reno's just getting to sleep the whole time, so of course somebody has to step up. And then we also had Sid and Vincent, who were we don't get to play with them, but we get to see them a lot more than we did Red in the first game. What did y'all think about Sid? Has been changed a lot from the character that he was in the original, and then Vincent, I feel like has been changed. He's more himself, but I feel like if anybody has some amazing lines in this game, it's Vincent. Like, of all the people, like, the dude is supposed to be super serious. He has like some of the funny lines. Like, what? Okay.
Nothing as good as think? Where can I get a phone?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I mean, Vincent has really changed because of Advent Children and some of the more character that they try to give him in that one. Maybe just don't remember Dirge Cerberus. Just he's really cool in Advent Children, guys. It's okay.
He's like way too serious in Dirge.
I'm very curious where they go with Sid, because he is not the straight up asshole that he was when you first meet him.
Way too happy.
And the fact that we have not gone to his hometown to see him be an asshole to his wife is like, are they going to change the spaceship storyline? Is it going to go different? Is it going to react differently to it? I'm curious what they're going to do with that, because the Sid that we have seen so far in Rebirth is not going to act in the same way that he does in the original at all during that section of the game. So I'm very curious what they do with that.
Yeah. There's a really interesting detail too when you learn that Sid knew Aerith's mother and
that's true.
and seemingly had a thing for her too.
Yeah.
Which really it positions him as in a interesting like father figure kind of area for Aerith, and I think that's fascinating. And especially because Sid is presumably going to be one of the most important characters in the next game, because there's that whole section in the original where he becomes party leader for a few hours.
Yeah.
Probably
Did
be
you
longer
like
than
the
2
way
hours.
Did you like the way they introduced him, Josh? Of he's the guy you need to be able to go to the next place you need to go to. It's not just the way he's introduced in the original.
Yeah, I think I like Rebirth Sid a lot. I think I like him in general. He's a more interesting character. I kind of hope they do dig into some of that. I mean, I totally understand why they wouldn't, because it's, obviously problematic and it wasn't really explored a lot in the original. I think they could do some really interesting things if they do kind of present his darker side and the resentment and the pent-up frustration, and kind of work through that as a resolution. I think that could be a really good complement to Cloud's story if they do it. I'm fine if they don't, because Rebirth Sid is basically a new character with his own interesting kind of stuff going on. But yeah, I do hope that kind of makes an appearance. Like I said, I just think it could raise some pretty interesting story points that kind of go along with what's going to happen to Cloud, presumably going to happen to Cloud in part 3.
The one change they need to make with Sid is he needs to smoke. I'm sorry. He has a whole limit break where he lights a stick of dynamite with his cigarette. Like,
exactly. We need to see that.
We gotta have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how they're gonna play that off. Are they gonna do that more of like, oh, that's part of his backstory, and then he explains why he doesn't smoke anymore or something? Like that. It's very. They definitely have to use that in some way, because I don't think they can ignore it if they're, or are they just gonna act like that never existed? It's just weird. With as much as the stuff that they brought in from 7 originally, I want to see if they actually use that or not. Yeah, I mean, they do a great job with all these characters. It's I think we could go on and talk about them a lot, but that also brings a lot of them forward into things we've mentioned with combat, right? They added some things to the combat that kind of helps prove some of that as well, right? With the synergy skills and synergy abilities where you have to use your other characters and you have tag team moves and things like that. Did you have somebody, I think you guys have kind of mentioned it already, like Yuffie's become a huge part of the party. Did you like the changes in combat, and how do you see how they could add anything else to the combat for part 3? Because man, what they did with what they added here, I feel like just took everything from Remake 1 and answered all the questions. Hayes, what do you think?
Yeah, I've actually talked to some people about this before. I like the synergy abilities a lot. I really think they add a lot to combat and make it feel more dynamic and make it feel like the team members are working together better. The big thing I think they could add to the next game is being able to swap out party members during battle. I think having that ability or integrating the party members that are in battle in some better way. Like in Rebirth, there's when your party's down, you can do like the backline commands.
Mhm.
So something like that, but more usable at any time, I think would be better. Obviously, Vincent and Sid are probably going to play drastically different from anyone else we've seen. But I could also see, it would be a huge change, but I could see them bumping it up to 4 party members at a time or something too. And I think that would, even just adding one more party member would integrally change how this combat system works. So I think there are a lot of like changes they could make that would really make that third game be different.
I mean, did you like the changes in the combat, and what do you think about maybe adding something like maybe like a Marvel vs. Capcom assist type thing to put them in there more if they don't do what you're saying, Hayes, which I think that seems like the most logical step, right? But maybe they don't want to do that where you're getting too much, like moving them around too much, but maybe an assist type thing. What do you think, Josh, of all the changes?
I think it's just silly because I wrote a guide on it, but I always forget if it's synergy skills are the ones you can use anytime or synergy abilities. But
Skills,
pretend
I think, are the
skills. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say pretend I know what I'm talking about and just go with it. The ones that you can use at any time, those are fantastic because filling up the ATB gauge in the original was such a nightmare. Like, I mean that. God, I hated that. So yeah, being able to use that to fill up their ATB gauge and use their skills more often, which you could use to build up towards the stronger skills. I think that was probably the best thing they could have done for combat. So that actually made it a lot more enjoyable for me. I would love to see a 4th party member, like Hayes said, because I think the thing I liked the least about the change from the Pixel games to the PlayStation 1 era games was that you drop down to just 3 party members. As far as other ways to improve it, maybe an option to kind of have them use their own skills as like I guess like a Persona kind of type system where you set a general sort of command for or even Final Fantasy 12, I guess, which you just kind of you give them behaviors to follow, and they'll someone would actually heal you and or would cast an elemental spell or something like that instead of you having to stop and choose the skill yourself. And yeah, I think that's the only way I could probably see to improve it.
So part of that was also that they added the folios, right? Where you had to get SP, which also connects to why you want to do the side quests and all the other stuff, because you get those books. And we talked about it, but of course that was also the bane of everybody's existence to have to do the MOG quests also because they gave you the SP books. Do you like the way they tied in the folio stuff, Scott? And is there anything else you changed to the combat?
So I feel like the folio thing was the one I used probably the least of all the new additions they added to the game. I basically would get the teamwork abilities, and that was basically mostly what I'd be focused on getting, because the teamwork abilities are really cool. And I always, of course, had to have the Aerith and Barrett one where they had the sunglasses before they did their big finale. But I do appreciate that one thing in the folio system is giving you the small magical elements that you didn't require you to use MP for. So I could actually focus on MP on the strongest moves I want, or if I want to just have one person be like a buffer or not. So I did like having that as an option they added in the folio system, but I also kind of always hated trying to find all the folio stuff. Because I was like, oh, do I have enough SP? It's like, no, I'm 5 off. Dang it.
Yeah, at least they let you kind of do your own, you could go back and take it off something else, and if you needed that 5 or whatever, letting you respec was good
nice.
too. Andrew, what did you think of, I guess, what they put in the combat and the folios?
Yeah, as others said, I loved the synergy skills and abilities. The one Scott's talking about, sweet and sour salvo. I feel like I did it so many times. I'm like, no, I know the name of that one. That was my favorite one. With the matching sunglasses, and as a small, this is like another Easter egg of like they didn't have to do this, but it's great that if you change their costumes, they'll have different sunglasses they put on, which is just a level of detail that like few people will appreciate. But when someone pointed out, I was like, wow, that's commitment. Yeah, I liked the folios. The one thing about them that I don't know, maybe I just haven't, maybe 127 hours in, I haven't played enough, but I feel like the limit breaks were really high up there. It took me a while to get the second level, and I think I like almost when I stopped, I got the third level. So that's something I'd be curious if in the third one, if they make limit breaks a little bit more accessible in terms of which ones you can use. I know that using the synergy skills and abilities, you can level up your limit break. I only did that to the second round. I've never gotten it to the third limit break, so that I'd be curious. Maybe there's an easier way of doing it that I haven't gotten to. But I'd be curious if that be something that Comet would say, okay, which limit break do you want to start with? Yeah, that was kind of the only thing with the folios that I was a little bit like, huh. But everything else I liked.
Randy, did you have a favorite synergy ability tag move to
No,
use there?
I was one of those players that, I mean, you watch it the first time and that's great, but I would hit a synergy skill and then switch to the one person that wasn't on it and wasn't even watching them.
I did appreciate that too. You didn't have to sit there and watch it.
It's like I'm just gonna continue to have a ridiculous movement going on the screen. I rarely touch the folios. I know Scott had brought that up. It was like every time you got to a save point, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to check your folios?" I go, "I think I've gained one. It's going to take me another 20 hours to be able to upgrade anything." So they just kept throwing it in your face, and you never really needed to use it. The one issue that I really had with combat, and it wasn't a big thing, it was just something because I'm not great at games apparently, but the block button being the same button as the synergy skills really messed with any timing that I had, because it felt like it would give you that little hiccup of time pause to bring up that menu. And if you messed up, I'm just trying to block. I'm not trying to do the skill right now. And then I get all messed up, and then I would just get really mad about it. So I just had screw blocking apparently, and I just roll around the screen like an idiot and hope I dodged everything, because I just got so annoyed by it. But then you get into like the Rufus fights where like blocking and parrying is so important. It's like I'm tired of seeing the synergy skills, so I got a little annoyed by those a little bit. And again, it was just timing wise, just my inability to block at the correct times that was very much on display when everything paused and go, nope, you were wrong.
I do appreciate how much Barrett loves his sailor suit.
Yes.
You know, he really like went after it with that thing. He's like, you know what? I think I'll just wear this more often. You know what it took me a while to figure out the synergy skills, but man, once you figure those things out, it's like Hayes said, like that will really break the game for you of like you want ATB fast, just use those things and immediately, like Yuffie is amazing once you use the boomerang thing where she sends it off and it comes back or whatever, her ATB is full completely. It's like, wow, they really found a way for you to just make this work so well. You can do what you want with it. They gave you a lot more freedom. And I appreciated that from the combat perspective. And also just that even the synergy abilities aren't like they have separate things. The synergy abilities aren't like limits. You can get knocked off using the synergy ability. I had somebody die in the middle of one. I was like, wait a minute, she didn't even start doing the. It was funny just to watch. Oh, she died. Okay, whatever. But it made you like respect the limit break. That's the only thing that still has immunity when they do it, which is a cool little function. Really quick before we get into, I guess like the the spoiler stuff and just a couple of other new introductions, was there anybody that was like a side character from Remake that you were like, wow, I'm actually happy to see this person's story continue or whatever? Like for me, seeing the whole Johnny side quest was ridiculous. Just he splits into like a million Johnnies, and then at the end he's like, they're like, well, we helped you a lot, so it's up to you now. You do it.
I also love that Johnny went, how am I going to show people I'm the real Johnny? Well, all my clones, I'm just going to put a leaf in their hair.
Yeah.
That will prove us apart. That it will surely never go wrong.
Hayes, did you have anybody that remake that?
My goofy answer is the Shinra middle manager, because I just love that the doofiest corporate guy in the world is kind of like realizing how troublesome his fascist employer actually is. But I also really like Kyrie. I think she's a lot of fun, and I really like the book that she comes from. The Kids Are All Right. And her like continued relevance gives me hope that we're going to see the main character of that book in the third game, which is his name is
that
Evan.
would be so cool.
Yeah, because he's a surprisingly important character that could play an interesting role, considering he's related to Rufus. So he's Rufus Shinra's long lost brother, basically, and I think that would be really interesting to introduce that dynamic, especially because Rufus has become far more important than ever.
Oh yeah. If there's anybody that by the end of the game you didn't realize how important he is, they pretty much told you. And we'll get to that for sure. Andrew, did you have somebody that you're like, all right, I didn't expect to see this person, but here he is?
Yeah, I mean, one is I guess this is a side character also from the original, but I liked how they went back to Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge in the Proto Relic quest, and you could totally miss it. But if you do it, it'll explain everything that happened to them. And of course, we do get a little bit more of Biggs in this one. But in terms of returning ones, I really like the cameos of the Wall Market folks on the Shinra ship in the card tournament. So I like that they put those in as little like fun little people who kind of say, oh, like remember us, and then they added a Chocobo Sam to the Chocobo side quest. So I really liked how they sprinkled them in throughout the side quests if you want to kind of like hunt them down and find them.
Josh, was there a particular one for you?
Not one that was a surprise. I think after Kyrie showed up the first time, I expected most of the named / important characters from Remake to turn up in some capacity. And I think I would have to copy Hayes there and say she was probably my favorite. But for less interesting reasons, I just kind of liked how she was a bit of a monster and got away with it, and everyone was just like, "What the heck?" But they had to deal with it anyways. So well done to her. You got to respect that.
They made that a whole arc. Cloud's like another place where he showed a lot of personality. He's like, "Stop calling yourself a merc."
Yeah, and
like,
that was a good bit of little characterization that actual Cloud kind of shone through for a bit. So, but yeah,
I like when Yuffie has a moment of self-awareness and is like, "Is this what you think of me?" kind of thing.
Randy, did you have one or?
No, I mean everyone was kind of hit. I will just reiterate. I love the fact that basically Midgar got so screwed up with everything that happened that all the Wall Market went, we're just going to go on a group vacation for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we just all kind of ran into them as they went along their little vacation. It was great.
A sad one is you run into Leslie in the chapter 12 quest with Tifa in that battle arena underground, and you go do that whole thing thinking that you're gonna find his girlfriend or whatever this time, and still nothing. I feel bad for this. Just felt bad for the guy.
That's definitely coming. He's definitely coming back.
Yeah. Scott, did you have one at all?
So I was actually really happy to see more Andrea show up, and so we could see do that with the whole the piano stuff with Tifa and Cloud, making sure that they have another person that can help them with their piano and all their musical stuff going on. I do like they had these side characters that kind of offered you the side quest to actually help them, and also then establish more of what they could actually do and be helpful for.
Mhm.
So you didn't have to learn more about the side characters, but I do appreciate the fact that they let you learn more about the side characters if you wanted to.
I guess one I forgot about that kind of fits here. Roche getting more of a deeper part of the
Yes.
story
Sean
here,
Roche.
instead of just being the goofy antagonist, him actually playing a major part in some of the way the story plays out later on. I thought was really cool because I think all of us, when Roche showed up in the first one, was like, "What the hell is this?" I mean,
Yeah.
he's a over the top character, but it's like, okay, I expect to see him in the second one, but why? And then you see him again in the second one. It's like, all right, this is the same thing. And then I do like from then on, he kind of goes in this path that was like, all right, he has depth now, and it's really, really good. So I'm glad that he wasn't just a comic relief enemy that you fight throughout the game.
I'm very glad they didn't tone him down either. Like
Yeah.
it becomes quite clear that his obsession with Cloud is more than just because he wants to fight him. Like
Yeah.
there's a little more there.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that moment in Junon where he shows up and like the whole jazz band starts playing, and then they're like, well, we're not really his fans, we're just doing
Right. Another part with Roche that was just a sneaky, hilarious moment is when you get done with that fight at Junon and you're leaving, and the group of soldiers that you were fighting with that you've tricked into where you were not the traitor or whatever, and they're like, so back there, you go, yeah, he's a dick. And they're like, no, not that. Are you the traitor or not? What is happening? I just loved Cloud's response to that. Yeah, he's a
that
dick.
whole section with the soldiers was great. Like by the end, I was like, you know what? Could they become like an extra part of the party?
Why can't
too?
we just
Like,
bring them with us?
Yeah, like,
They're basically just your children at that point.
yeah.
I like how there's a side quest where you can return to them, and they're just like, yeah, we still need your help. We kind of know that you don't work for us by now.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
care.
even the commander's like, oh, we know, but we need you to figure this out. You know, and something that they showed really early that I don't think we expected was the weapons. They got their moment in chapter 8, chapter 9, and then along with them, we got a second class. I know everybody wasn't a big fan of these, the Whispers. We got a second version of the Whispers. Now we have White Whispers. What do you guys think of like how they did the weapons? And I guess we could talk about the whole chapter 9 thing too, how they like that whole moment was just awesome. Like it's one of the few times we've ever seen Sephiroth look human in a way where, man, he's having a hard time there. Like, what do you guys think of how they introduced the weapons and everything, Hayes?
Yeah, I really like this aspect, actually. I think it was a really smart way of transforming an element from Remake into something different, because now basically, like, you know, the Whispers were the arbiters of fate before, but now that fate has been changed, they've essentially become manifestations of people's will. So, you know, like the Black Whispers are Sephiroth's will, and the White Whispers are essentially the will of the planet. And in that recent documentary, one thing Nojima mentions is that they wanted to make the planet itself seem like more of a character. So I think that's why you get the weapons earlier and why you're seeing the Whispers, because you're starting to see more that the planet is fighting back against Sephiroth's will and his plan, and how Aerith ties into that struggle as well is really interesting. So I'm generally pretty positive about what they did. I'm interested with the weapons to see if we still get all the weapons from the original game. Like Ultima weapon and Sapphire weapon seem pretty sure that we'll get, but I'm curious to see if we're going to get Emerald and Ruby as well.
Josh, what do you think about how they showed off the weapons here?
I actually thought it was pretty exciting because I have this kind of whole theory about how the moment that lasts for like maybe 2 minutes in the original Final Fantasy VII, where the weapon, attack Midgar and everything just kind of goes to hell really fast. I think that's going to be a whole huge plot point, and seeing the weapons show up earlier in Rebirth was one of the things that actually sparked that theory for me. But I think, kind of like Hayes said, it was a sign that they're taking a lot of the things that were either left unsaid or maybe they just didn't have time to develop further from the original game, like making the planet more of an active kind of participant in the story instead of just, oh, here's the live stream. It doesn't matter until the very end. Well, now it does. So, yeah, I think that whole thing was really well done. And it made me really excited for part 3.
Well, I mean, they found a way to tie the story actually into this, which was like one of the probably biggest changes from the original, is having this whole section with Tifa and Cloud, and even Sephiroth gets involved and everything. Andrew, like, what did you think when you saw this? Like, is this where you finally go, okay, we're finally getting something here? This is getting different.
So the moment in chapter 9.
Yeah,
that was the thing. I, like people have said, I thought it was a nice way to blend the original with the remake, because in the original, like, you didn't see the weapons that much. They brought them in early, but they also tied the whispers to the weapons, and I feel like we didn't quite get a payoff with that. But I'm excited to see how the weapons and the idea of the planet and the life stream tie in seemingly directly to the idea of fate and the different timelines and things. So again, I think we'll find out in part 3, but I like that they set up more of a correlation of the changes that they're making with the original lore.
Scott, what do you think about the whole?
I really loved everything that they had to do with the weapons. I loved the live stream having its own manifestation. Plus, it adds even more to the whole section that's helps us see more about the live stream in Cosmo Canyon. It helps us understand a lot more of just the planet having its own will. And I love that the weapons themselves on display just look so good too. So we just have so much more to do with the weapons now, and it does make me interested to see where this is going to go and how it's going to relate even further into the bigger overarching plot.
Yeah, and they found a way to kind of put Shinra in here as well, of like they're kind of pacing after them, and then Yuffie with the wonderful line when she sees the weapons, like, "Oh, there's a huge materia there."
Good luck.
Randy, what do you think of the stuff with the whispers and all that?
Exactly what everyone else has been saying. I think they did a great job of teasing them. I think, as somebody that watches Maximilian talk about Final Fantasy VII for the last several years and trying to break all this stuff down, I've kind of gotten in the same boat as him, where the third game is going to be giant kaiju battles. Do they go as crazy as Final Fantasy 16? Probably not, as far as those battles go, but just the over-the-topness of those battles. So just getting a sneak peek of the weapons. So I really don't think these are the final forms of the weapons, because the two that we saw looked very generic and fish-like, and going back to the original ones, obviously they were very polygony, but they were all different and they all had their own abilities. So whether these, as I've heard in other podcasts say, or they're just like scouts for the planet to see what's going on and then they awake the giant ones, or if these morph into things, we will see. But it's just, again, where you can kind of tell that they know what they're going to do with these, and they're set up for the third game, so they're going to tease it now and really build out to it, and it works far better than the tease of Kate Sith in the first game. They just throw him out there when the sector is falling. So
everything's died. Here's a cat. What?
Yeah. So great.
Cat.
So they do such a better job with going, hey, like big things are coming with a third. And I like that there's now two different kinds of whispers. Like you said, it feels like Sephiroth is controlling one, the planet is controlling the other, and or Aerith is controlling the others, depending on which way they want to go with it. So they continue to try to have the battle over fate happen. And I think that's really, once we get into the story of this, as a main arching plot point is battling fate. Like, you thought you beat fate in the first one, but there's obviously many points in Rebirth that goes, not fate's, you can't beat fate. And then I think Sephiroth is going, no, well, I can control fate. I mean, let me try to control fate. And they're doing some interesting things. And what I really love about this section of the game was it was one of the very few where they went the way over the top stuff of differing from the original game, but they at least sprinkled it here and there instead of just, all right, we're in the last 30 minutes. Here we go.
Yeah, no, they did a great job also of like showing one of the big times that Sephiroth controlled Cloud.
Yeah.
Right. Of just, oh, okay, this isn't, he's really got him worked now. He even, slashed Tifa into the live stream and all that stuff could have possibly caused her to die himself. Like, can you imagine how that would have screwed him up if that happened? And then just like what that has to do to the whole, like, that's when the party has to start thinking about how crazy is this guy, like I loved all of that. And then also the stuff later in the chapter where you get everybody's, I love that whole thing of chapter 9 of the guys get stranded there. Then the girls have to come and like save them. Maybe that fight with Scarlet took a little bit too long, but a lot of that chapter 9 was great because it was in an area that was, it's crazy that this was an area that was literally, you could completely pass it in the original. It's literally there just so you can meet Zack's parents. And they added all of this into it and then added Cissnei in there. What a cool moment that was too, of just tying Cissnei into it. And like you said, Andrew, they don't really mention the whole, okay, she knows people. But then if you do the thing with the proto relic later too, with the Turks, she comes in. So that whole chapter was done really well. I thought too.
Minus the chicken.
Yeah, minus the chicken. Yeah.
If you're not going to complete the game and you're not going for the platinum, that's a side quest. The moment they say chicken, run. Just go away.
Or realize that you don't have to wait for the chicken to go all the way back to the starting spot. You can literally just throw the thing back as soon as it starts walking back, and it won't be that big a problem. That was my problem. I kept waiting for it to go all the way back, and I was like, dude, I keep running into the camera. I keep running into Barrett. I keep running into Eric. Like, and then
I had to put a little marker where I was supposed to bring the chickens because I kept forgetting where that was at. Like when we had to go all the way down and to the left. Like, okay, where do these guys need to go again?
Did everybody else have that moment when you go all the way out to like the freaking way past the beginning of the town and you go, no way am I making it all the way from here all the way to the back to the town again?
Yeah.
Talk about adding stuff just really quick because I think this ties into it as well because the whole game has this relationship system now that they added as well, and talk about over the top and adding stuff. The gold saucer, they somehow took all the dreams I think we had of that when in the original and just decided this is just going to be like an actual Disney World themed dark thing. And then the moment you see Dio and it's like Hulk Hogan Dio's is just happening here because he's flexing every 10 seconds.
Dio is great.
And Dio,
what did you guys? That whole opening number with Andrea, like that whole thing is just that was great.
I think Dio is my favorite character that they have brought over from the original game that we did not see in remake, just because he was over the top in the original. And again, it was exactly the same as Walmart. Like, there's no way that Corneo is going to be this wild in this new game. And they're like, no, it's going to be way worse. And that's Dio. It's like just the way he flexes on everything. Like, he's having the most normal conversation, but making it so over dramatic and doing the muscle stuff. And you're just like, oh my God. That part was so great. And again, it's the small things that they do in this game that just shows that they know exactly what they're doing, especially for people that are big fans of the original game, by just going, oh, you're walking around the gold saucer and you're checking out all the stuff, and there's a big wall poster of coming soon snowboarding because everyone knows it's gonna be in the
Everyone
third
knows
game.
what's going on.
And I guarantee anyone that played the original game or is a fan of Final Fantasy VII saw that poster and marked out.
Yeah.
Every single one.
One of my other favorite details in the gold saucer is when you see the stage play, Loveless. And it's called Loveless G version, which is insinuating it's the version created by Genesis.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just like, because everyone keeps wondering, like, is Genesis going to be back? Like, are they going to bring Genesis back? And they just give the little tiniest bit of hints.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very small, but they did that there. Did really quick, who did everybody go on the date with?
It's got to be Tifa.
Who everybody say Tifa at once, or
Tifa.
did actually somebody have a
Except for
different
Andrew.
one?
I was gonna, except for Andrew.
Aerith, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, Aerith.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna.
Aerith as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to go on the date with Tifa, but it was Aerith my first time because I kept accidentally doing all her side quests.
That was the problem with the thing, because I wish that they would have added the. I get why, right? They wanted to have a mystery to it, but like when you finish the game, they actually give that whole explainer of exactly how close you are with everybody, whereas they kind of leave it as a mystery. And so all you see is like everybody turned dark blue, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to start doing something. So I don't, and I had to start during that thing with Cosmo Canyon, and she's doing the whole thing at the campfire. I had to be a total dick with Cloud, and I'm like, I feel so bad. I'm so sorry, but it's like I gotta make
Around a
sure.
spiel,
That,
shut up and sit down.
yeah,
You're getting too close, and I know what's coming.
yeah.
I gotta say, my second favorite date though is the one where if you don't have affinity with any party members, and you go
Oh,
with
yeah.
Sid and
Oh
Kate,
Oh my god, that
Yeah.
was fantastic.
the vibes are just like going to the carnival with your two divorced dads and their cat. It's like,
And the cat doesn't shut up either; it just keeps talking.
I really appreciate that you did have to really play it smart and invest. Like I know
Yeah.
Kyle, who writes for the Outerhaven, was really going for the date with Tifa. And got the date with Red 13 because he just like wasn't doing enough side quests or something. And I was like, I'm so sorry for you, but I like that it's not obvious who you're gonna get, and if you do
Yeah.
like kind of muck something up along the way, you can get someone totally unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was nice. That kind of made it a bit more. I mean, it was nice to have that element of surprise, like you said, made it feel a bit more special, even if it wasn't the one that you wanted. This was still a unique scene that you weren't expecting, and yeah, that was a nice touch.
Yeah, definitely. That was it was a cool moment. The one with Barrett's also really sweet too.
Yeah,
Just if you haven't done it yet, it's really nice. Like they're actually all really good, to be honest. They could have phoned some of these in because they know people are mostly going to go on the Tifa date or the Aerith date, but they really like added that dedication to all of them that they all made them somewhat worth it.
I think what's also really interesting about those dates is that they all in some way relate to Cloud and Tifa's relationship.
Yeah.
Every single one of them talks about Cloud and Tifa.
yeah. Well, and I mean, theirs is kind of like Cloud and Tifa's is kind of the only one that's actually
The
like,
definitive
explicitly romantic.
one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
End game. No.
Right.
Yeah, they did like the only person he kisses on a date is Tifa, so they did kind of like solidify that. And I also just one of the things I liked how each date gives you a little bit of lore. Like I haven't watched the Red 13 one or gotten that one, but apparently they talk about like Red 13 having like vestiges of the memories of needing to protect Aerith. So that's kind of cool. They were like, it ties into like him trying to remember those like foreshadowing moments.
you should watch it. He's like half a second away from wagging his tail at the start, and it is the most adorable thing ever.
Yeah, I just got Aerith, and then I went back to do the one with your two dads and their cat.
Did you just did anybody have an issue with the way they did the Barrett and Dine stuff as like how they did that from going to the saucer to. I did wish that they would have left it a little bit more ominous. I think they gave it away a little bit too much, but other than that, I liked it. I kind of understood why they didn't do the whole thing from the original where they have him, dive off the. Did anybody have an issue with how they had him die in this game or the fight or anything?
I think that's one of the rare cases where it loses a little bit of the weight that the original game had. I still like it overall, but I think the way it was depicted in the original game is aesthetically and like tonally more dire. Because you kind of, in the original game, you kind of get the sense that Dine never really forgave Barrett. But in this, there's very much an intention of like, yeah, he's out of his mind, but he kind of forgives you. And I kind of liked in the original where like there wasn't really a resolution between them. Barrett just kind of
closure.
Yeah, Barrett just had to move on because his friend was gone now. He just had to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah, it would have gave a little bit more weight to that moment. That like one of the like cool moments that Cloud has in the game of like, I got you, bro.
Yeah. That being said, yeah, that scene does have one of my favorite lines of the game where Cloud, after it all happens, Cloud is like, "We're here to help.
Yeah.
I'm here to help if you need it." And I really like when Barrett goes, "I'm starting to think you actually mean it." And I think that is like such a perfect moment that shows how their relationship has developed.
On a cider part of that, I hated the boss fight just as much as I hated it in the original. It was my least favorite boss fight. It was just boring, just shooting back and forth. But no, I totally agree. Like at first, I was really into what the changes they were, where you see Dine like just talking to Meryl and his wife and acting like they were there, and you're like, oh god, he's just completely lost it and he's way over the top. But I agree, it does kind of lose its weight more and more as it goes, especially when you get the Shinra involvement as well, and things kind of change the way it was. It was not as much one-on-one as we got in the original, and I do think it takes a little bit away from it.
Yeah, and then of course you have Dio and Rude squaring off afterwards with the test of strength going on there. Like, and what was it? The adding the thing with Palmer at the it's kind of like, why do we have to have this fight right now? But it's just, it goes to the whole goofiness of this game. They do not let you sit very much with anything before they just start adding something silly.
See, the Palmer stuff had me at first also curious if they were going to change everything around with Sid and his hometown, but he doesn't get hit by a truck. So we still have that moment to look forward to.
Yeah.
One thing I did think was I did kind of actually appreciate in Rebirth with the whole Dine thing. I mean, I think the bit afterwards was kind of ruined it, but the fact that there is that kind of closure between him and Barrett, but Dine still doesn't want to see Marlene. He still can't bring himself to do that. I think that actually makes it a bit more tragic because it doesn't end on this kind of like one note sort of, oh, he's the bad guy, can't forgive, and that's it. It kind of makes it a bit better for Barrett because obviously Barrett's the better choice. Barrett's going to be the good dad. I think the deal with Dine, it's sadder for him, for Dine obviously, because he is a bit redeemed, I guess, but he still can't bring himself to see his daughter, and it gives Barrett's role as parent a bit more weight because it's not now it's not that he's the obvious choice, it's that there could have been other yeah, exactly, there could have been other options, and now he's got this responsibility to make sure that he doesn't let her down even more, if that makes sense. I kind of, my thoughts sort of trailed off there, but yeah. But I think that kind of plays into more of the emphasis on his doubts as a parent that they kind of started seeding with the earlier side quests. So I think I'm the only person I know who actually liked it for that reason. But yeah, I actually did like the change more because of that.
Is there any other, like, aside from, we're about to get to the ending here, is there any other changes like that you really liked or didn't like that they really did in the from the original. I will say I love the fact that the guy that runs the prison has a name now, and he has the most amazing music when he comes out. And
I
was
I
just
think
like,
he
what
had a
is
name in
this?
I think he had a name in the original, but he was only in like one scene, so you don't
Yeah.
really remember it.
But now he's Gus, and
And he's voiced by Troy Baker of all people.
yeah. Troy Baker really does everything too. Yeah.
Glad I'm not the only one that the moment he started talking, I went, God damn it, Troy.
You're not allowed to ship a video game out unless you have Troy Baker in it somewhere.
Very true.
Exactly. But all right, let's get into the actual chapter. Well, I guess let's do chapter 13 because I think that has a lot of stuff that goes into the end as well. So, did everybody think that chapter 13 lasts too long? At least the Temple of the Agents, or just me?
Oh yeah. For me, I think that was the one section. It was that and the Shinra house with Kate Sith they added. When I was like, oh, I actually like the original better. And so I like how in the original Final Fantasy VII, the Temple of the Ancients is like this very kind of adventure movie, Indiana Jones, Death Trap inspired place. And in this one, it was cool, the idea of like manipulating things, but it did feel like the gimmick went on for too long.
Mm-hmm. It's that situation where you have to do everything twice because you get split up into the two groups, and instead of just, all right, I'm going to do a little bit here and then a little bit with this group, it's, oh, let's go back. I love how it says several hours. I go, I've been playing for 20 minutes. Was I supposed to play this? I mean, this segment is several hours.
How long
long,
it feels like.
Yeah. They knew what they were doing.
Even the game kind of understands. So I like the Aerith part where you're trying to collect all the little soul bits and stuff. It's like that part that took forever, and I totally get. I felt the same way where it felt like it took so long, but it really I think hits home because it's you just got to the point where it's like, all right, once you leave here, you can't go back till you beat the game and you can do your chapter select stuff. So here you go. And you're like, all right, I'm right at the end. So I'm going to sit down. I'm going to beat this game. And then 6 hours later, you're like, is the Temple of Ancients ever going to finish? What is happening here? I have to go to bed. Like, I think if it was at any different part, I think that the length of it was still far too long, but it was because it was like all right, you're in the home stretch. Kinda.
I understand how they had to kind of jerry-rig like a random part of the original game to make it this final moment. So that was kind of the tough thing of taking an arbitrary section, making it this big finale.
And it just sucks so much because the end of the Temple of the Ancients is so good.
Yeah,
when you have every character go on their individual little quest, their little story bit is fantastic. The Sephiroth stuff at the end is one of my favorite parts of the entire game. But it was after, like, for me, it was almost 2:00 in the morning because I was dead set. I'm beating this game now, and then going, let's come on, let's go, because I wasn't expecting Temple of Ancients just to last that long.
What did you think, Hayes? Did it last too long for you too, or?
I do. Yeah, I think the section as a whole was a little too long. My favorite part of the entire game is that section near the end where everyone gets their own like trial. Because I think it's a remarkable moment of really kind of showing what unites all of these characters in the same way, is that they're all kind of survivors of trauma in one way or another. And so we get to see them all kind of confront their trauma in some way and then come out of it and realize, oh shit, everyone else just did the same thing. And I think that's a fascinating moment where that really creates like a really strong bond between everyone.
Josh, what did you think going through that?
Well, I definitely agree with Hayes. That was your piece about Aerith's story in particular kind of ties in with that as well. But anyways, I have a strong dislike for all of Rebirth's dungeons, like even the Nibelheim reactor from the prologue. I can't stand it. So yeah, that was kind of just like it magnified everything. That was my least favorite part of the game is the dungeons, just because they were just kind of bland and stretched. But I think the ending redeemed it for me. But yeah, as far as in general, no.
Scott.
So this is a fun story for that entire section because I got it. Finally got there late at night, and that was during the time when I was like, "Don't worry, I just need to finish this part, then I can get to the actual finale. That's when I'll save, and then we'll get off the game." I didn't get off the game till 4 a.m.
Yeah.
My wife went to bed like 3 hours before that. I was like, okay.
I think I was like 4 or 5 a.m. as well. Yeah.
Like, I will get to the finale, dang it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does.
That was definitely, I think, way too long. I do really enjoy all of what we got to see from the trauma of all the characters. I honestly didn't think they would actually have, I guess, the balls to show Red 13's actual getting captured by Hojo and the experimentation that it took on him.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to actually see Myrna for the first time, like, ever. So that was also amazing.
That scene was brutal.
That was, oh, God. I almost cried at that thing. I did cry during the Aerith part.
Yeah, I was going to say, walking around in Aerith, please help me. I'm like, God damn it.
All the people are just like, screw off, kid.
Just like, geez. Knocks her down. Like,
also taken
it's
from
a good
the
thing Sector 7
book.
got flattened.
Yeah, exactly. That comes from the book, too. I felt sad reading it, and then I'm going through the game, and I'm like, oh, this is the book part, and then, oh my God, this is so sad. Randy, you and I both having daughters, it's like,
yeah, it's brutal.
Oh, bone chilling, you know?
And then, I mean, obviously they could not do it because of the way the story is built and what they had to follow. It would have made absolutely no sense, but I would have loved to see what they would have done for Cait Sith.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with the character that we know he is actually controlled by. Obviously, do they reveal that at that point? Who knows? But obviously, Cait Sith's not part of your party during this, so they didn't have to worry about it. But it's just something I thought about afterwards. Like, what would his have been?
It's just that same clip of remake of him going like, "No."
Right?
Yeah, I imagine his would have been tied to the collapse of the plate.
Yeah, because he really cared about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did tease him. Like you saw it at one point where he's doing the fake Cloud and Tifa and Barrett poster, and you see the Sith behind him or whatever.
That was great.
And Song comes in, he's like, "Don't have too much fun now." Like that was good.
I think that's an interesting wrinkle too, because the original, you presume that no one knows who's controlling Cait Sith, but in this, it's abundantly clear that Shinra knows exactly who Cait Sith is.
Yeah. I mean, did anybody have I had a big issue with I wasn't a big fan of the whole chasing Cait Sith around the saucer. It felt like unnecessary.
Disappears.
Yeah, it felt very unnecessary. Like they just had to prolong that for some reason. Did anybody else just wish that was a cutscene?
Yeah, that took too long. That was another spot that took too long, especially when you did find him and you felt really dumb. Right, he was just out in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, how? I walked around this place 3 times.
So, it's like you have to trigger it in a certain way so that the scene will play, and it's like, oh God,
you don't trigger the scene, then you have to go around to go back to where you initially think you'd have to go. It sucked.
So yeah, for me, I think that the whole thing with not only the characters, but also I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that noise is either.
Oh well, they're pigeons. I'm in New York, and it could be you have really loud pigeons. I was like, is that how loud are they? Yeah, sorry about that. New York pigeons, man. Yeah,
that is not where my brain went.
Sounded like a printer.
Yeah. Also, the moments with Cloud in the Temple of the Ancients are freaking nuts. Like where he's just murdering Shinra soldiers, and then everybody goes to that trial, and he's just like, "Can y'all hurry up already?"
Yeah, oh,
Like,
that was
like what a
Eric.
dick! Like, you
Eric
know,
opens her heart and has this great speech. All right, let's go.
I think it's
Let's open the
yeah.
door, dang it.
Right.
I think it's interesting because this story split into multiple parts. You know, like we don't get the resolution of Cloud's identity crisis.
right?
Like we just see his identity crisis and what that could mean going forward. But unlike the original game, you know, you don't find out what's going on with him. So I do wonder for, you know, so much of these new games are tied to knowledge of the original games. But anyone that plays these as their first games, I do wonder what people think is going on.
Why do people
Yeah.
like Cloud? He's such a jerk.
Yeah.
It's like Cloud gives like no reaction to stuff. Like what's you know? Yeah, it's just there was so much good stuff in there. It's just it was tied into like one too many battles. I did love the 2 battles from the original with the dragon and the demon gate. Those were really well. I died at the dragon like 3 times until I figured out what you have to do to get it to stop making the lava go all the way to the end of the freaking block. Like, how do I not die here? What am I doing? So we get past the temple, you know, and we get to this whole section with Aerith and going on a dream date with Cloud. This whole thing with her giving him the materia at the end and pushing him into another realm, waking up in the city of the ancients, talking to her as well for like one last time, all that. What did y'all think of this whole part here with how they did this, how they're leading into that big moment? Hayes, what do you think?
So I think I've seen a lot of varying opinions on the ending. And I think from an initial reading, I can understand why people might be disappointed. But the more I've sat with it, the more I really like the way they did this ending on kind of a metatextual level, I think. And especially that date. Because I think that date to me functions as kind of a chance for Aerith to try and erase the guilt that Cloud feels. Because presumably if she knows her fate and knows what happens, you know, Cloud carries that guilt with him all through the original game, even into Advent Children. I mean, that is a defining factor of his character in Advent Children, is the guilt he feels over not being able to save her. And so I think a big emphasis here is Aerith realizing that she can't change her fate. It has to be the same. But what she can change is how the people around her are affected by her choice. And simultaneously, that date section also functions as a way for Aerith to realize that Cloud isn't Zack. Cloud is Cloud, his own person. Because that date is step for step and almost an exact recreation of Aerith and Zack's first date. And it's her kind of realizing that, you know, she loves Zack. And she loves Cloud in a different way, but not the same way. So I think it's a really fascinating kind of introspective way of setting up that ending. There's just so many different layers of it.
Yeah, I think that really gets emphasized by the whole here, take this. This is about saving the world and saving you. You know, I still want to find a way to save you, which she's does that several times throughout both games where she wants Cloud to find himself.
Yeah.
But you know, he's not able to.
That being said, as much as I love Rebirth, I think we're in a really interesting position right now, because I think the general reception and kind of quality of the trilogy as a whole is going to heavily rely on what they do with the third game.
Yeah.
And while I'm hopeful that they're going to do it right, I think there is a case where the third game kind of retroactively makes Rebirth worse. I think that's a very real possibility.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to stick the landing with everything that you've been building up for these 2 games, especially with what they build throughout this entire game of Rebirth. And I'm with you. If the third game just stinks and goes way over the top with some of the stuff and none of it lands, and none of the stuff that they're trying to build and making us question for these, well, 4 years will be probably about 7, 8, 9 years by the time we get to the resolution. And then we feel like well, that the whole thing sucked and the whole thing fell apart. But I really liked the Aerith date scene. I thought there was a lot of little Easter eggs in it with the different stamp, which was the first of many that were getting ready to be thrown in your face. But that was the kind of the first time you're like, oh wait, there's a third one. Oh, okay, so now we're in a whole different, because we all kind of figured out what the second one was at the end of remake, and we were on the same page. We're on the same page. Square, we're here, and then you're throwing this wrinkle at me, and now there's a fourth one over here, and now what's his bucket from the beach is just running by with the fifth one, and like they just had a lot of fun with it. But I thought Hayes nailed it as far as like the different context that they were trying to hit with that date, and just Aerith trying to answer her own questions and give relief to Cloud. And I thought the scene was really well done, especially with her waking up going, it's just a dream, don't worry about it. We're just here. Don't worry about the crazy stuff that's actually happening to us at the moment. But
Josh, what did you think of, I guess, before getting to like the actual ending stuff? This is kind of like Aerith saying bye.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to add to that Hayes didn't already say. I mean, he kind of captured it perfectly. I think it was a natural way to build on everything they've done since remake, as far as just deepening the relationships, giving Aerith more of a personality, because in the original and even kind of in remake to an extent, she's just quirky, happy-go-lucky. Oh, she's not gonna let anything get her down, and then there's a lot more depth to her that comes out at various points in Rebirth, like in the oh lord, I forget exactly when it was. But it was after the beach fight when she's saying how she's afraid of the darkness inside her.
Yeah.
I think the dream scene and the date, I think that was a really pivotal moment for her as far as coming with her own fate, because I think a lot of the emphasis is on, as players, what's going to happen to Aerith, and then Rebirth has Aerith saying, okay, this is what's going to happen to me, and this is how I'm going to handle it, this is how I'm going to deal with it. So she's kind of addressing the problems that she raised in that beach scene, the darkness inside her, all the uncertainty, all the problems and everything that are weighing her down. This is her answer to that. This is the choice that she's making, and in a very Aerith way, she's thinking of other people. She's not gonna just do the thing that's gonna make life easier for her, even if life doesn't go on for her. So yeah, I think it was an excellent scene, and there, like Hayes said, and like Randy said, there's a lot to unpack there. So I loved it, honestly.
So moving beyond that, obviously, to Cloud wakes up, they're walking to the City of Ancients. You get that whole entrance part with the whispers again. And then basically they all, weirdly, that Vince is the last one that has to come in to like let him through. And then you get that whole area there. And then we get that ending where you don't know. You do, you don't. What happened? Did she die? Did she not die? Did Cloud stop it? Is it all in his brain? Scott, what did you think when you got done?
Oh, I had to go through a lot of thinking and processing on things. But I do remember the first thing I did do was write an entire thesis to Andrew. It's like, okay, so this did this did this. But my first reading on everything before I wanted to look up theory videos on stuff was what we got to see in the Zac areas, where the Traverse Town of the live stream, where everything kind of enters in, all the weird anomalies are there that shouldn't be there, kind of a deal. And so when we got to see the different timelines diverge and all these different worlds that are created because Sephiroth is screwing things up just because he's Sephiroth and has a big 9,000 IQ plan in mind of what he wants to do with the world. It's just interesting to see that the live stream is using so many different ways and methods to try to correct what Sephiroth's trying to do. And one of them is this timeless timeline kind of Traverse Town area that can intersect with different worlds and has so many different things going on that you have to like pay attention to so many little things to understand that's what's going on, because it's like, well, time doesn't exist here, clocks don't exist here, the entire memories are all over the place because they're from different timelines of different events that happen. It's like Zach shouldn't know this thing, Big shouldn't know this thing, and it's just like there's so much going on that it just makes you so like, I had to like redo like different views to see like, oh, this is what happens in this section or this section or this section, because there's just so much theories you can make with what we see at the end of Cloud tries to save Aerith, does save Aerith somehow in one timeline, and then it doesn't in another, and you aren't sure what's going on since. And Cloud's the only one who can see both.
Andrew, how much of that thesis did you actually read? And how,
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's all connected, because when I finished it, I messaged both Hayes and Josh to be like, "Wait, what do you think happened?" And I got two completely different answers, and I was like, "Okay, that's good. Well, I'm in good company here." And yeah, I have so many thoughts about the ending. I played it 3 times. The first time, I just had no idea. The second time, I was, like Scott said, I was looking with a new perspective, paying attention to the rainbow shimmers and like who passes through them, who doesn't. So that's when I went, okay, I think we're getting a diverging timeline scenario where like she's alive in one, not alive in another. Then the third time I was like, oh, well, there is kind of a finality to it where like it seems like maybe she is just dead, and they all kind of converge into like the one where she's definitely dead. Since then, I've decided it's like all of the above. I think it's just deliberately ambiguous, and we'll find out in the third one. I will say, in terms of like things, how I felt about it, there's kind of something I didn't like about the ending, something I was mixed on, and something I really loved. The one thing I didn't like about the ending is that I felt like I didn't have as much of an emotional response to it, only because I was kind of confused. It tries to have its cake and eat it too. So I feel like with the original, spoilers, but everyone knows this point, but like she dies, and I was like, oh, that's really quite sad. And this one, it was because they give the hint that maybe she's still alive and you're not sure, it kind of undercut that sadness for me personally. Something I was kind of mixed on is the idea of kind of find out in the third one, like they are kind of saying, okay, you have to play the third one to like really know. It feels on one hand a little bit like a marketing ploy, but on the other, it does invest me in the third one a lot for me to say, okay, we'll get the answer in the third one. But the thing that I really loved about the ending, it was kind of touched on a little bit with that date scene, is in the original, it felt a little bit kind of incidental that Aerith dies. Like it's like, oh, it is sad. But I think the developers even said they'd toyed with it being Tifa, with it being Barrett, and then settled on Aerith. And I loved how in this one, it felt like it really was this huge mastermind battle between Sephiroth and Aerith for control of the planet, like we talked about with the whispers on Sephiroth's side, those on Aerith's side. And seeing how Aerith says, okay, a version of me in one timeline is going to hide a materia and then give it to Cloud this one moment. Like she's planning, like you said, like Sephiroth has this mastermind plan, but Aerith also seems to have one. And that really excites me of the potential for, in the third game, like these two mastermind plans of the planet and all its personification, and Aerith guiding it, going up against Sephiroth, his whispers, and his plan to take over all of fate. That really excited me as an addition that wasn't the original game.
Did anybody have like a thought when Sephiroth starts explaining about all the worlds and everything? Be like, I don't want the MCU in Final Fantasy VII, or were you expected it at this point? Like you were fine with that?
I was fine with it, so we started having this discussion, and now all I have in my thought is Sora all of a sudden popping out, and we get that whole in-game deal where a bunch of portals pop out, and like all the heroes of all the Final Fantasy games and all the Kingdom Hearts stuff all show up to take out Sephiroth. Now that I have that image in my head, I hate it. But before that, I didn't mind, especially because they do such a good job of teasing it. Like, okay, we have all these different timelines and we have all these different branching paths and all these different things that happen, but they get closed, or at least most of them get closed. And now I feel like part of what we'll get in the third game is Zach trying to reopen one now that he has kind of been able to see that there's a way to get back. And obviously, being able to fight with Cloud, even though they weren't really together, but they were because of the weird connection section that you were at in that final boss, will be an interesting storyline to get in. I brought it up earlier in this, but the whole idea of fate, and we thought we defeated fate in Remake, and we thought, oh, everything's going to be completely different. And there's several points throughout this game, especially with Aerith and Zack, where they show it's like, no, there's certain points that are going to happen in every timeline, and you might have skirted it here, but like every choice that Zack made, he ended up in front of an army or a whole lineage of Shinra soldiers ready to shoot him down, because that's how he ends. We see right after Aerith gives the white materia to Cloud that Sephiroth comes through the door and he's there to hunt her down. He's going to kill her in every timeline. That's just how like fate is going to work. And then the way I interpreted the ending, and it has definitely changed, and especially watching other spoiler casts and listen to other people talk about it. And that's what I love about both of these games so far. Because if you go back to when Remake first came out and the reviews came out and they're like, great, the game's great, but the ending, man, I don't know about that. And then over the years, we all went, okay, I get it now. Like, I get the ending, and we've all had these great discussions, and it's like, oh, it really made you think. Same thing happened with Rebirth. The reviews came out and they're like, oh, that ending though. Like the ending, I don't know what people are going to think about it. And already, as we've gotten a couple weeks in, more and more people, it's like, it just brings these discussions in. And that's what I love about it. But to me, it's like, did she or did she not die? I think she died. Like, I don't think that was a Sephiroth changing of fate or anything. We see it many times where Cloud sees something that's not real. We saw that with Nibelheim, where, I mean, even with the demo, where he is seeing things he wasn't supposed to, and then all of a sudden things shake, and then his vision's back with him. I think he thought he saved her, but obviously he doesn't. That's why the rest of the party member sees her dead. It's why Sephiroth at one point goes, "You're never going to see the truth with clouded eyes," which is a play on his name, which made me cringe a little bit, but it's 100% true. Cloud can't see the truth. And Sephiroth even like throws the blood of Aerith at him. Like, look, I this is her blood. Like, she's dead, but you can't see that because you don't want to see it. Like, I think they took the whole idea of Cloud being so messed up at this part of the original game. And after he gives off the black materia a little bit later in the original, where he goes completely off the deep end, and they've like surrounded it even more. So now he's seeing Aerith, and he is seeing his own thing. And I love listening to what was it, Easy Allies spoiler cast yesterday with Maximilian on there, where they were talking about there's a theory out there already that the Aerith we have at the end of the game is Sephiroth, because she has a red tint in her eyes and she's acting different than she did before. And it's like, this is what I absolutely love about this stuff. Final Fantasy VII was my favorite Final Fantasy VII of all time because it got me into RPGs. It got me into this series. But what they've been able to do with this and being able to break it up into 3 games is throw so much wildness out there that is connected in such a fantastic way that everyone went, well, that's not like the original, so it sucked.
Yeah.
But then we have these discussions, and then more and more happens. And then by the next game, you're like, I cannot wait to see how it connects with the crazy ending they had. And in 3 years, when they finally give us the first trailer for the next game, we're all going to go, oh, I know where it's going. I know, I got it now. I have it figured out. And they're like, no, you don't. No, not at all. And we're going to surprise you, and you're going to hate it at first. And then you'll understand what was going on in our brains, and it's all going to work out great.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting ideas in the execution of the ending too. And I want to shout out Giovanni Colantonio on Digital Trends, put out a really fantastic piece on how he defended the ending. Has a lot of the same thoughts I do, but you know, when they announced the remake, the number one question was what happens to Aerith. Absolutely, that's what everyone asked. And so, you know, it kind of created this Schrodinger's cat kind of situation of like, is she going to be alive or is she going to be dead? And I think the very execution of the ending plays into that idea, because I think they intentionally obfuscate what happens in that moment, because it's even right up until the second it happens, they're trying to give you hope that she might live. But then it ties into that whole theme they have at the end of, you know, fate and our lives. There are certain things that we can control, but there are also certain things that we can't. And I think there's a really profound message in Rebirth of like, you know, you can't always control things that happen. You can't control who dies. You can't control certain things. And I think that's why Biggs dies as well. But, you know, a lot of people say they brought him back for nothing, but I think he also ties into that idea of, you know, that's something you just can't change. Biggs died, and that's just it. He can't escape that fate. And I think there's some interesting agency given to Aerith by letting her know what her fate is and choose how that fate plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how they piece this together. And I love the ending for the same reasons Randy did, in that we all know we're going to have to wait. I know people wanted to have an ending, right, to this. You wanted to have that moment that you had in the original where you have the burial in the water and all that, and you have okay, it's never going to hit the same way. It doesn't matter what we try to tell ourselves. It's not going, unless this is your first time, then okay, maybe. But most people are coming this having played the original. It's not going to hit the same way if they do it the carbon copy same way, right? So we know we're going to wait at least 3 years. They got to give you something to discuss in that time. They got to give you something to anticipate in that time. And this was a great way to do it and play into that whole, man, Cloud is really screwed up. Like, Cloud is, dude, if they have some kind of psychiatric thing in Nibelheim or Midgard, wherever that he needs to go to, they got to have like the super duper version of that, because, you know, like Tifa's gonna really have to pull something out of the hat in mid-deal for this to, like, they had to make this bigger, right? They had to make this. Now he has something else he has to overcome, because he thinks that she is actually alive. So how do we go from this to what's going to happen in the third game? And yeah, it's such an awesome thing for them to do with that.
I just want to say real quickly that I don't think Cloud thinks Aerith is alive. I think he knows that she's dead. And he just accepts that she's has her own battle to fight. I have, you know, there's a lot I could say. I have a whole theory about how Cloud traveling to the other world has connected him to the life stream, and now he kind of has this multiversal sense like Aerith and Sephiroth have. But it basically boils down to I personally don't think Cloud thinks Aerith is alive.
It's funny you both mention that, because I think that in that moment where like Tifa has to go on the live stream and resuscitate Cloud, I think, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think that's where Aerith and Zack are gonna reappear in this one, because it's like it'll take a lot more than maybe like just Tifa. So I think maybe we'll get, with him being in the live stream, we'll get that convergence of the live stream and like the real timeline of them being like, okay, we need to help this guy move on, and like we need everyone now.
Yeah, we'll have the Advent.
Calling it, we'll see.
Yeah, because there's deliberately laying the groundwork in this game of the live stream, not just connecting the planet, but now there's like this universal live stream that runs through all the multiverses.
Right. Yeah, like, are we going to see the black and white live stream and all that eventually? So, like, you know, we talked about it already, but moving to the party, the moment where they see Aerith dead, to the ending where they're repairing the ship. Aerith has her whole moment where she's sitting there talking to Cloud. Is she really there? Is she not? If you look close, she's only there when Cloud's looking at her. The rest of the time, she's not. You know, I know Max and some other people brought up the whole is she Genova thing, playing around with Cloud even more, and then they take off, and that's the end. And the whole unknown journey will continue into the next game. We'll talk about the stuff with Rufus in a little bit, but what did it change anything? Did you have a moment where, okay, I think I know what's going on when you got the death scene, and then when you saw this, you're like, oh, wait a minute, Cloud just put black materia in his sword, and what the hell happened? Like,
That was kind of what the crap did you do?
Yeah.
I think it is kind of perfectly executed to be as ambiguous as possible. Because it's like, right, I think right when you say like, oh, only Cloud can see her, she is dead. There's some moment where like she puts her hand on Red 13. He's like, oh, Aerith? And you're like, wait a moment. Someone else,
Yeah.
like, did he just say that because he happened to think of her? Or like, did he feel that? Also at the very end, one line I keep thinking about is when she says like, oh, I have to go back. And he's like, oh, like, what's it like? She's like, oh, it's like a second home. And I've heard people say they think that it could be she's referring to the live stream. She could be referring to another timeline. She could be referring to the Forgotten City. It's not really clear. And so I think they could have easily been like, I got to go back to the city. But I think the fact they never put a proper noun there, they're really leaning into the ambiguity of that scene.
I think they also nail it really well with leaving her there where she has to go back and do this stuff. So then it's not just Cloud leaning over to the right and talking to somebody that's not there for the rest of the party.
Yeah.
For most of the third game, she's just not there. And I think that'll keep Cloud sounding sane until everything falls off the rails where he's like, yeah, we left Aerith back at the Forgotten Capital. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, absolutely, we did. We left her in a different state than you thought you left her in. Or though Hayes' idea is very interesting too. And again, this is why I absolutely love the way they did this, because there's so many theories out there, and being able to hear different ones is really, really fun. And hopefully they'll be able to answer all of them in a fantastic way in the third game, or they're going to go way off the rails and Sora's going to show up. So we'll find out. I mean, they did also, with the Gilgamesh stuff, where he's in other Final Fantasies. I've heard some wild theories there as well, where they're trying to combine all of the Final Fantasies together. And please do not. Let's not go way over the top with this. But no, I really thought they nailed the ending, especially because you were expecting something over the top with the way remake ended, where you're like, all right, they're going to really set up a lot of stuff for us to kind of mull over for these next couple of years. And they really planted some interesting seeds that now we all get to have a lot of fun discussions over the next couple of years.
I just felt bad for Tifa at the end.
Oh, yeah.
The most. It's like, that's your best friend that now, again, you had somebody ripped away from you. She doesn't even say bye to you at all. Like, she, like, why couldn't she have talked to Tifa at the end there too? Like, it's weird.
Well, Tifa didn't tell her to wake up.
Yeah.
Cloud told her to wake up. She went, okay.
I do think there's going to be some kind of resolution there, because in the original game, when the live stream comes out and stops Meteor and you beat Sephiroth, there's a moment where Cloud and Tifa are like kind of seeing the live stream, and there's a line where Tifa's like, I can sense her, and Cloud goes, yeah, let's go see her there.
Yeah.
And that's presumably them talking about, they know Aerith is there in the live stream. So I think there will be some kind of resolution between Tifa and Aerith being able to meet again, or just even some kind of shared knowledge or something.
I wonder if she sees anything because of her interacting with the live stream already too. Like,
I think that's a very viable possibility too. Yeah.
Yeah, like they show that flash where she kind of sees the whole where Cloud has the whole hand on her face thing, and then they see the flash of the blood too, and it's like, I wonder if she can see both versions, and she just doesn't. She's also confused and doesn't know.
The live stream is kind of like the magic card of Final Fantasy VII. It can pretty much do anything.
Right. Then at the end, after this, they do the whole stuff with Rufus, and Glenn from Ever Crisis shows up, and he's supposed to have already been dead. And then you find out it's Sephiroth, and Sephiroth's messing with him too. And we find out the whole thing about Wutai is a ruse to keep Rufus off of the actual goal of, he's also supposed to be chasing Sephiroth as well in their own way. So basically, we kind of already knew because of the way that they don't really talk much about what Yuffie's going through, that Wutai was probably going to play a big part in part 3. And also, Nomura's already been on record of saying, well, we're basically building an entire country, so get ready for this thing to be big, you know. But how much do you think are we going to be basically fighting a war for half of 3, or like what do you think is going to be going on there? And does it, because I heard some people be like, man, why did they even put this in here? I hate this even exists. Where were you on this kind of being like the last thing you kind of see with this game?
Do you want me to answer first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a lot of thoughts about Rufus. Yeah. I've been beating the drum since remake that Rufus is one of the most important characters in this trilogy. And I'm absolutely sure of that after Rebirth. Because you see it suggested in that final scene that Rufus is also Viceroy Saruf, who's the de facto leader of Wutai. So he's kind of orchestrating this war. But at the same time, there's hints throughout the game that Rufus is somehow a little more aware of what's going on than most of the other characters. And there's a scene at the end of Rebirth where it's clearly shown that Rufus can see the whispers, which makes him, at that time, the only person outside of the main party that could see them. So I think Rufus is going to be this like pivotal second half of the third game almost. I don't know if I want to say he's playable or the Turks will be playable in some way, but I think to Josh's point earlier where, they're kind of going to flesh out the weapons attacking Midgar. I think as Cloud and everyone is doing their stuff in Midgar, we're going to see a secondary plot play out where Rufus is trying to like hold down the fort in Midgar and trying to fend off the weapons. While also, I think he's the third one with a master plan. I think there's the Sephiroth plan, the Aerith plan, and the Rufus plan. What I'm not sure of is if they're going to give him the arc that he has going into Advent Children, where he kind of has a redemption, I think we could see a redemption moment for Rufus where he's the one who kind of like puts the nail in the coffin of the weapons and does that in order to let Cloud and the others fight Sephiroth. Those are my thoughts.
Like it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like because they've said that the developers have said that it'll line up with Advent Children, lead into it, and to me, I don't know how much they'll do redemption for Rufus in the third one, but I felt like the scene where he meets with Avalanche and says, "Oh, you know what? I'm not. We can work out a deal here." To me, felt like hinting at that eventual Advent Children redemption, just a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely feels like Rufus is going to play a huge part in that. And I mean, isn't Voice for Saruf like Rufus backwards or whatever in Japanese, supposedly also. So that kind of gives that away. And it's interesting that they decided to do that. Like, I wonder if Glenn is going to come back and be like one of the remnants as well. Like, is he going to end up showing up again, like the actual Glenn, or is Sephiroth been controlling him this entire time?
There's some big theories too that Glenn is Cloud's father.
Oh God!
Please don't.
Please don't. We don't need a Darth Vader moment. I don't think. But so, what do you guys are hoping you want to see for the third game? Like, is there a region that you're really hoping to get to see? Do you think it's going to be kind of like more like Rebirth, where we're going to have world intel of all these other regions, or are they going to try to, okay, you can go back and do stuff with all these other places, but it's going to be more story driven like Remake?
I think you'll have a lot of stuff from the original regions that we went to in Rebirth that you can go back and do some stuff. They already have all the assets, so it's easy to put a lot of stuff there. But yeah, I do think, there's not a ton more off the top of my head, places that you're going to go visit for the very first time. So you're only going to have another handful of regions that they can do kind of the same deal with. I mean, obviously, Wutai can be it's going to be a pivotal part of the game, and you can do a region there, and obviously up north as well. And of course, snowboarding will be a huge part of it. Medio will probably have its own spot. So yeah, there's a few different spots. So I really think that they're going to basically do what they did with Rebirth, expand each area, and then just add stuff to the original areas. Because now, obviously, your airplane is back in working fashion for now, and you'll be able to fly around to different places. And you already kind of had the ability to go to a lot of different places already there at the end of Rebirth. So I don't. Well, there's a chance that they go back to the remake way and go straight forward. I just don't see them going back to that. I think they just continue to expand the world they've created.
They definitely got to let us use the high wind, right? Like we got to fly around.
They've already said, yeah, they're trying to figure out how to implement it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does anybody? I feel like the wait may not be so long. I feel like it's not going to take them 4 years to do this. We had COVID during that time. That slowed everything down immensely. And they have a lot of the world built already. I mean, yes, they have to figure out stuff with the high wind. They got to do a bunch of other regions, what they're going to do there. But does anybody think we could definitely have this in 3 so they can do it's the 30-year anniversary of Final Fantasy VII. Here's the third game.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably an internal goal that they'd like to hit. But I mean,
yeah,
I hope that it happens because I don't really want to wait that long. But
yeah, I agree.
Speaking for everyone, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it just depends too, because I know one thing they said before Rebirth released was that Horizon Forbidden West and its open world structure inspired a lot of Rebirth. So I guess I don't know. I guess it just depends on what their goals are. Like if they already have a set vision for what they want the world to be like in Part 3, or if it's or if maybe if something else comes along and they're like, wow, this is good, let's change it to this, so it's more like that. So I guess it just depends, really. I mean, but yeah, I'd be surprised if the 30th anniversary wasn't some kind of like internal possibility of this would be fantastic if they could.
Like Randy said, a lot of that third part is going back to previous areas, so they could reuse a lot of the assets from Rebirth. But again, I don't know how much they're expanding. Like is Wutai going to be the biggest thing we've ever seen? I don't know. And again, implementing the high wind, it's tough to know. They could add a lot on, but I'm cautiously optimistic only because a lot of the areas we've been to before return in the third part.
Man, I had a thought and now I forgot. Is there like something that I definitely think we're getting all of these? Do you think it's going to be kind of a similar thing like we've had in the first 2 games where we're going to get a lot of the same beats as the original 7 and then we're going to blow it up at the end? Or you think they're going to have a lot more kind of interspersed this time? Hayes, like, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a little more mixed on that with this one because things, the flow of events was largely the same in Rebirth, but what they added on has kind of set things up to be pretty different. I think Wutai is kind of the deciding factor here because, it was entirely optional in the original game. And I think Vincent is the other part of that. All of Vincent's story stuff was entirely optional. So I think those 2 pieces are going to be mandatory now, and I think that'll drastically change them. But I think the key events from the original game are still going to be in the third game. It's just going to be a lot more filled in around them.
Yeah, I think the way they've set up the end with Rebirth and even a lot of the world building from throughout Rebirth, I almost don't think it's possible to stick rigidly to the original structure like they did in Rebirth, because you've got all this talk in almost every region around the world of this anti-Shinra feeling. Well, that's good world building. I hope it goes further. They kind of make it seem like it's going to go further, kind of like integrate with the talk before with Wutai. You've got Cloud equipping the black materia at the end, which seems like a pretty big deal. To just kind of ignore that and try and slip back into the regular stream of events would be a bit jarring. So I think well, I mean, it's kind of the whole trilogy structures, and of course in the third one you're going to see what they were planning from all along. But I think they've been building to something that's going to be like, since Remake, I think they've been building to something that's going to be more drastically different for more than just a few scenes in part 3.
Scott, are you ready to play Dirge of Cerberus again? Because
I am
we're
not
gonna-
at all ready to play that game again.
But we're definitely going to see more Deep Ground, right? Because they hinted
Yeah.
at them, and we got to see them in intermission, and then that's kind of a lot of that you could tie in both Yuffie and Vince's stories there too. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how they bring them back. And are we going to see Glenn's other cohorts that are supposedly with Avalanche? I felt like what you were saying yesterday during the recording. I feel like we definitely got to see like Avalanche HQ and that kind of thing in there as well somewhere. Any thoughts on what you want to see or we could see in part 3?
I do think that it's going to be similar in the structure of Rebirth, where most of the plot points will be the same, but like every like chapter ending will be slightly different. I just think that they're probably gonna make the chapter ends a little more bombastic, so that there'll probably just be more stuff at the ending that's going to be a little side-eyed or shifted, because it's kind of how like Remake was initially too, where like the end of chapters were slightly different or slightly changed because of the whispers when they were introduced, and then the ending was big. Rebirth had the same thing, but the chapter endings were also even more so bigger because they had to include all the Zack stuff at the end of every chapter. And then it got another bombastic. I think it's just be the same way in that aspect of a lot of the plot points that we do see will be like that, with the ending even be more blown up. But I do think that we only have like 3 new areas that's going to be showing up, with most of the rest of it's going to be retreading previous regions. Because we have like the crater, we got Rocket Town, we got Medeo. So like
Bone Village, I think. Is that what it's called up north?
Yeah.
That I think they
have a lot of
skipped Bone
new
Village, but they might add it
places
in.
They could add Bone Village in
for at least in the actual plot beats. So this is going to have a lot more added if it wants to be in the same kind of like timeline as Rebirth.
Yeah. Are they going to have us go underwater and get one-shotted by the weapon?
I genuinely don't know how they're going to fit everything into one more game.
Yeah.
They fit a lot into Rebirth.
They did.
Yeah,
they weren't afraid to tell you that this game was going to be 100 hours. So if
I'm just very curious what the side missions are going to be to get Knights of the Round, because chocobo breeding.
I feel like that's the
chocobo breeding is not a thing
in
this one. So what are they going to do to have us go get that? Because that's going to be a big deal.
I feel like they know they have to put Knights of the Round in.
Yeah. I think that would be a riot going on if they don't put Knights of the Round.
No, the material itself will be in. It's just what are you going to have to do to?
Is it going to be a more Chadley crap?
And I hope that when you use Knights of the Round, you have to sit through another 2-minute long cutscene, just like the original game.
And then they all 12 of them just surround the arena, because with the way they do summons now, you summon them, they do their thing, and then they're just fighting with you. I just want all 12 just all over the place. I want my PlayStation 5 to sound like a jet engine.
I could see a case for Knights of the Round as like the secret boss, like Gilgamesh was.
Yeah, that could. It'd definitely be something there. I agree.
So what's the third one going to be called?
Well,
Crisis Core stole what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
The one I've seen mentioned the most is Return, Final Fantasy VII Return.
Yeah. I could see like Redemption.
Return would be a little boring.
Yeah.
I mean, just because it is something that all the hooded men have been saying, and it's something that Sephiroth's been saying, everyone's been saying, which, I mean, it would fit, but honestly, I would be a little disappointed if that's what they went with.
I'm between two. Obviously, one is very close to what we all thought it was going to be, but Reunite instead of Reunion, just kind of go that same route, or Reclaim was another one I've heard that I've kind of really been stuck on, because Sephiroth's whole idea is reclaiming the planet, and it seems like every single one of these names has a hidden meaning in the actual game that we get. So I'm leaning Reclaim as my guess, but yeah, they kind of screwed things up with the Crisis Core reunion deal, because we all thought that was a lock for the third game.
Yeah.
If they really
They're actually
wanted to
gonna
be
come out of-
ballsy, they could just do Final Fantasy VII Revengeance.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Or they'll come out of left field and say it's Final Fantasy VII Roche, and it's actually just all about Roche. You know?
Yes.
He's his own game. That would be.
It's
yeah.
only from the perspective of Roche. We don't have. Cloud is not even in the game. No.
Right.
Final Fantasy VII Rescue Rangers.
I could definitely see like Redemption or something like that. That could work too.
One that I was thinking on was like Restore or Restoration, just with the whole restoring the planet kind of.
Yeah.
Deal.
Yeah,
could
that would
work
be a
too.
good one.
It's definitely got to have Re in the name. So
Yeah.
If it doesn't, there'll be riots.
Restoration would actually be perfect though, because I mean it fits so well with Cloud, and actually him being restored as a person.
yeah,
Mhm.
Cloud.
Yeah.
That would, that would be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, does anybody else have something they want to say about this game we haven't talked about yet, or something they really liked that you want to give a shout out to before we head out of here, I guess?
All the great stamp designs.
Yeah. It's still hilarious that they had that one moment of giving us a different stamp just to have Biggs die. Like, what a way to...
I like
the
that.
one... You go ahead.
I like that there's an entire song dedicated to just the chasing dogs.
Yeah.
Wow,
I was
wow,
just
wow.
thinking that. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, we didn't talk about, like, listen, the music in this game is
The soundtrack
absolutely bonkers.
It is goated.
Like, I mean, I'm gonna go to the concert in Orlando when it comes here, and I don't care which of the songs they play. There's not a bad one in that. Like, I love that they are able to take just a regular song that plays during, and then they somehow make it into a battle theme, and it all works. And it's like, and then they hold the note so it can go back to the regular theme again. And like, man, it's so good. Almost
Seamless.
all of it. The way that they have this work. It just, and then everybody has a theme. Like, there's a theme for every freaking little thing in this game, and they really went over the top with it. I love that. Just, it's that whole dedication to how much they love this game and everything on this. Did anybody? I played it in quality mode. I didn't mess with the performance mode.
I never touched it.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember what I played in now that you mentioned it.
Yeah. Whatever
I
it
think it
starts
changed
in,
the
that's
settings.
where I
That
play.
was-
Yeah, I did
That was
quality.
like 5 years ago. I don't remember now.
Yeah.
I've reviewed 3
Yeah.
other games since then.
Right.
Only 2 on my end. No.
Yeah. Look, this is a great game. I think it stands by itself. They weren't kidding about that when they said you could play it by itself. Will you understand? I'm an iota of half the stuff that's going on in this game. Probably not, but you can play it by itself. Does anybody think it works as a great like introduction to the entire Final Fantasy?
No.
for people?
Absolutely not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I played the original and I knew where all this stuff was going on, because if I played Rebirth by itself, I'd be absolutely lost and probably not have enjoyed it as much as
There'd
it
be a
was.
lot
This was
more
a love
Cloud
letter.
haters in the fandom if they started here.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being on. I was worried when I was like, did I ask one too many person to be on here? And then it wound up working out great. All you guys are awesome. You know, if you want to go ahead and give a plug to what y'all do here before we head out, I guess starting with you, Hayes. Where can people find you and all that?
Yeah, you can find me at Soulfleet on Twitter and Blue Sky, SOL Fleet. Most of my work is on Inverse. If you like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I'm not quite done covering it yet, so keep an eye out.
Josh?
You can find me on Twitter at Finn the Brave. It's FIONN and then the Brave. No funny spellings with those. And I'm try to be as many places as possible. You'll find most of my work on Sports Illustrated with through GLHF. But yeah, I'll be around, so keep an eye out.
Scott?
Alrighty, so I'm SithScott pretty much everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, and the like. You can find most of the stuff that I write on the outerhaven.net.
Scott just did a preview of Stellar Blade.
Yes,
So if y'all are looking forward to that. And Hayes has been doing a ton of stuff on Dragon's Dogma 2. So go check that out. Andrew, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Andrew_Agress on Twitter. Also, AndrewAgress.com is new things. Find me there as well. And yeah, I do most of my writing for the Outerhaven. Covered a ton of Rebirth stuff, and I think still a couple more things in the works. So yeah.
Randy?
Most of my writing now is more sports stuff, but as far as the nerdy stuff, you can look me up on Bad Brackets, the new show we started a couple months ago, where I torture 3 innocent souls as far as the ridiculous brackets that I put together over certain topics. It's over everything. Best WrestleManias was the one that just came out yesterday. I'm about to record best golf courses. That'll come out next week. And then Sean, Scott, and Andrew were with me yesterday. We recorded best Final Fantasy games yesterday. It'll come out April 15th is when that episode will drop. So we hit every single kind of topic you can imagine. The whole point is I come up with a bracket that at some point somebody cusses at me about. So that's my goal.
Hey, and if you want more Final Fantasy, it's coming pretty soon. We got that Rising Tide DLC on the 18th. So there you go. Go back from being a party to just playing as Clive, and you get to hear Ben Starr be amazing again. So until the next time, I will have a regular episode of Video Games to the Max with my regular co-host Mark. On Fridays, we usually do it live, and then it'll be out on podcasts. Thank you all you guys for joining me here. This was fun, and hopefully we can all have y'all on again another time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You